For every 1,000 people, there are only 2.4 doctors. According to the data, this places Japan as the 5th worst among OECD countries. Amami considers that this isn't as grim as it seems, noting that a country like Tanzania is in a much more dire situation. In a desolate, unfamiliar landscape, Amami finds himself confronting a massive, dragon-like beast, wondering what a doctor could possibly do in a place like this. The scene shifts to an izakaya in the city. Amami Yuito arrives, wiping sweat from his brow and apologizing to his friends for being late. His friends greet him warmly, acknowledging his hard work at the clinic. One friend remarks that they haven't had a drink together since they were interns because everyone is always so busy. His other friend, Okuzawa, jokes that despite the overtime, he's in perfect shape. Amami asks Yamagishi for the reason behind their gathering. Yamagishi nervously announces that he is going to be a father. His friends are completely shocked by the news. The news spreads, and even the waitress offers her congratulations. As his friend gets excited to celebrate, Yamagishi clarifies that there's more to it, and that it also concerns Amami. Amami's casual attitude about his transfer jolts his friends. Yamagishi apologizes to Amami. Confused, Amami asks what he's apologizing for, stating it's just a transfer. His other friend presses him, demanding to know where he's going. Amami reveals he's heading to Seiwajima, a remote island without a doctor, starting tomorrow. He believes that since there are people in need, someone has to go. His friends are stunned, calling him crazy and questioning what will happen to his career at the hospital. He is interrupted by an urgent call from his former workplace. His demeanor becomes serious as he gives instructions to prepare for an immediate operation. He explains that a patient needs him for a ruptured varicose vein and that he has to live. Before rushing off, he warmly congratulates Yamagishi again, reminding them that the patients are still his responsibility. As Amami leaves, Yamagishi reveals that he was the one who was supposed to be transferred. His friends recall that Amami didn't drink at all during their get-together. One friend notes that Amami used to love drinking but has since stopped. His friend recalls Amami saying he didn't want to regret it if something happened to one of his patients, calling him a real hero. He concludes that everything Amami does is for the sake of others. Back in the operating room, Amami-sensei announces he will begin the hemostatic process. He gives the order to prepare the EVL. Amami reviews test results with a concerned mother, explaining that a gene mutation has caused hypophosphatemic rickets. Amami reassures the mother and her daughter that the medication is working, which is a great relief. His colleagues observe him, noting he stayed overnight again after stopping a patient's bleeding. They remark that on his last day, he is determined to look after his patients until the very end. One colleague admits she doesn't fully understand him, but acknowledges that without him, the girl would have suffered multiple fractures. The little girl, Nana-chan, thanks him enthusiastically, calling him old man. Amami just smiles back at her. His colleagues wish such a good person could have stayed in the academic fields, but conclude that someone like him can't stay away from where he's needed most. For the last time, Amami reminds the mother to make sure her daughter takes her medicine and wishes her well. The girl cheerfully waves goodbye. Amami thinks about his destination, a village without a doctor, knowing it's a one-way ticket from which he'll likely never return. As he's leaving, Amami bumps into his colleagues and thanks them for all their help. With a hopeful look, he tells them he'll try to come back someday. The journey to the island begins on a boat cutting through choppy waves. The boatman shouts over the noise of the sea, pointing out that the doctor isn't feeling well. Amami, terribly seasick, weakly replies that the pills he took must not have worked. The boatman remarks on the rough sea, wondering if all doctors are this delicate. Amami finally arrives at the island in a downpour. An old villager apologizes for the messy state of the room, explaining the person in charge was drunk. Amami finds himself unable to understand their thick accent. Despite the suddenness of it all, he announces that he is the new doctor for the village and is ready to help anyone in need. A village elder tells the new sensei not to worry. Amami is frustrated that he can't understand a word they're saying. He politely explains that he's new and can't understand their dialect, promising to learn it for future appointments. The villagers fall silent, staring at him intently. The villagers express their immense gratitude that a doctor has finally come to their island. One villager reassures him, saying the chief can be a bore and that they'll be in his care. The elder laughs, remarking how incredibly lucky the islanders are to have him. Amami is touched by their warm welcome. There are 600 such doctorless villages in Japan, and their pleas to the government are often ignored. Amami promises to do his best to learn their dialect. The villagers take their leave, promising to return when the storm passes. Amami calls after them, saying he'll be in their care and urging them to come to him immediately if they feel sick. Alone at last, Amami collapses onto his bed, exhausted, and reminds himself that he needs to learn the local dialect. A strange crackling sound from the refrigerator catches his attention. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupts outside, as if lightning has struck the building. Amami is thrown by a violent surge of energy, and his world dissolves into chaos. The scene shifts to a dense forest where a carriage comes to a halt. The beasts pulling the carriage stop abruptly. A group of armored men drive the beasts onward through the forest. Behind them, a chained girl struggles to keep up. The girl, Korone, collapses from exhaustion. A guard on the roof of the carriage orders them to stop. The driver yells back, asking what's wrong. A guard prods the other chained prisoners, telling them to get up. The driver looks back, wondering what the commotion is. A richly dressed man smoking a pipe tells him to ignore it. The man coldly states that they don't sell defective products and orders the guard to just kill her. The guard hesitates, muttering about the trouble they went through to capture them. Deciding he doesn't want to get beaten himself, the guard agrees to carry out the order. He approaches the trembling girl, telling her it's too bad. He curses her bad luck and poor stamina as he raises his weapon to strike. Just as the guard is about to strike, a massive chimera emerges from the trees. The beast roars fiercely. The guard screams in terror, realizing it's a chimera and that they need to run. Korone looks on, trembling in fear. The chimera bares its sharp teeth. Amami awakens on the ground in a vast, unfamiliar forest, his medical bag beside him. Disoriented and with a twig in his hair, Amami looks around. He calls out into the strange woods, asking if anyone is there. He hears a slurping sound from his dropped sports drink bottle. He is startled to find a small, blue, slime-like creature drinking the spilled liquid. To make sure he isn't dreaming, Amami pinches himself. Feeling the pain, he confirms that his senses are working, and this is reality. Fascinated, he compares the creature to a video game slime and wonders about its biology as he offers it the rest of his drink. The slime creature happily accepts the rest of the drink. Amami offers the whole bottle to the creature. As he sits back, he concludes that this place is definitely not Sawajima Island and wonders where he is. Just then, he's shocked to see the chained girl falling from the sky above him. The girl lands directly on top of him. Startled, Amami cries out in surprise. He notices her strange, animal-like ears as she pants heavily. His medical training takes over as he recognizes her labored breathing, realizing she's in distress. The girl collapses against him, trying to speak. He realizes he can't understand her at all. He can only apologize helplessly, saying he'd like to help but can't understand. Suddenly, the small slime creature leaps onto his head. After the slime lands on him, Amami coughs in surprise. He looks at the girl, suddenly understanding her words. She is frantically telling him to run. Confused, he wonders what they're supposed to be running from. He looks up and sees the massive chimera staring them down from behind a tree. Realizing the danger, he scoops up the girl. The beast sniffs the air, homing in on them. Amami grimaces, bracing himself for what's to come. With a scream, Amami bolts, carrying the girl in his arms to escape the charging beast. He trips and falls hard on the forest floor. As the chimera charges, it suddenly slips and crashes to the ground. Seeing their chance, Amami and the girl scramble to their feet, stunned by what just happened. The chimera recovers, roaring in fury. Amami quickly drags the girl into the bushes. He tells her to stay hidden and not make a sound, deciding that using his medical penlight is the only way. Amami dashes out into a clearing, shouting to get the chimera's attention. The beast turns its gaze towards him, its eyes narrowing on the new target. The girl calls out to him in horror. Amami successfully draws the beast's attention. The chimera lunges straight at him. He grits his teeth and unleashes a blinding burst of light from his penlight. The intense flash of light envelops the area, stunning the chimera and stopping its attack mid-lunge. The dazed chimera looks back before retreating. It turns and flees into the forest. The slime creature presents itself proudly. Amami thanks the amazing creature, realizing it was responsible for saving them and for allowing him to understand the girl's words. With the immediate danger gone, Amami rushes to the girl's side, asking if she's okay. He notices the rashes covering her skin. He recognizes the symptoms instantly, diagnosing her with a severe allergic reaction as his first medical treatment in this new world begins. The girl is wheezing, covered in hives and barely conscious. He checks her pulse, but her radial artery isn't palpable, indicating her blood pressure is dangerously low. Amami realizes she is in a state of shock. Amami recognizes the life-threatening condition instantly, anaphylaxis. He sees the wound on her leg, but determines he must deal with the allergies first. He quickly rummages through his bag for adrenaline. He finds it an adrenaline auto-injector. Amami apologizes, warning her that the injection will hurt a little. He administers the adrenaline into her thigh. The girl cries out in pain. Suddenly, a group of beastmen appears, cautiously approaching them. Amami is surprised by the newcomers, who identify themselves as being from a nearby village. The elderly baseman declares that the girl is his granddaughter. The other basemen aggressively question what Amami is doing to her. The realization dawns on Amami. Amami explains that the treatment will take a while and requests a safe, clean place to work. The beastmen are confused, having never heard of medical treatment. He pleads with them for their help. They arrive at a building in the village. Amami lays Korone on a table inside, surrounded by the concerned villagers. He attaches a pulse oximeter to her finger to check her oxygen levels. He is relieved to see a reading of 98% and plans to administer steroids next. The village chief believes her symptoms are caused by the god of the forest's curse. Amami calls out to the chief as he prepares an IV drip for Korone. The chief watches in awe, concluding that this human must be a real magician. Korone's breathing becomes steady and calm. Amami informs the villagers that she is safe for now. The chief looks on, still processing what has happened. The IV fluid continues to drip. Korone's eyes slowly open as she regains consciousness. Amami is relieved, noting that her level of awareness has improved. She looks up at him, startled, and identifies him as a human. In a panic, Korone leaps up, trying to escape while Amami cries out for her to wait. Tangled in her chains, she falls to the floor with a thud. Amami calmly approaches Korone, who is now on the floor. He gently asks if her leg is still hurting. Amami asks if she would allow him to examine her body. He pleads with her. She stares at him, blushing and wide-eyed. His request causes a surprising, energetic reaction. The room is filled with suds from her strange reaction. Amami is taken aback by the unusual event. Now calm, Korone looks at him with resolve. She shyly asks him to take good care of her. In a distant, grand city, a different scene unfolds. Ekres speaks in a strange tongue. They perform a ritual on a man with a corrupted hand. Ekres channels a powerful healing magic. The magical energy completely restores the man's hand. The man weeps with gratitude and relief. The man expresses his gratitude, but Ekres credits the healing to the right god's guidance. Ekres states that the man's faith has moved them emotionally. A hefty sum of gold is paid for the service. The man sadly recalls his companion, who could have been saved if treated earlier. With a cold look, Ekres declares that the other man simply didn't have enough faith. They look out over the city and call it a shame. Under the starry sky, Korone expresses her amazement. She touches her leg, astonished that there is no pain. Amami explains that the anesthesia is working and reassures her that the scars will fade. She thanks him gratefully and he expresses his relief. Korone asks Amami if he is a magician. He explains that he is simply a doctor and that his methods are different from magic. She questions this, believing anesthesia to be a type of human-only magic. He clarifies that it's not magic but medical care. He tells her it's a skill that anyone can learn, which leaves her stunned. Seeing herself as just a slave, Korone tentatively asks if she could learn it too. Amami reassures her and says he will help her if she wants to learn. He enthusiastically proposes that they learn together. He introduces himself as Amami Yuito, inviting her to call him Yuito. She shyly introduces herself as Koron. Yuito tells the approaching chief that he looks forward to working with Koron. He adds that his granddaughter is doing well. The chief thanks him, mentioning he can now pay back the slave trader. Koron trembles with fear upon hearing this. Yuito is shocked by the chief's statement. The chief explains that he gave his granddaughter up as a slave to protect the village and asks how Yuito brought her back. He adds that healing magic outside the church is forbidden and they can't afford it, so Yuito can't feign ignorance of their laws. Koron tries to defend Yuito but is told to shut up. Yuito insists that he cannot ignore someone in need right in front of him. The chief retorts that magic is more expensive than life itself. He declares Yuito a source of trouble and tells him to disappear. Yuito shouts back that their reasoning is absurd. Suddenly, the chimera bursts through the wall, roaring furiously at the terrified villagers. The villagers panic, believing the god of the forest's arrival spells doom for them. They scream and run for their lives. The chief glares at Yuito. He accuses the human of having summoned the calamity. The chimera stands before Yuito, growling menacingly. Koron realizes the creature isn't attacking and questions why. One of the villagers yells for him to watch out. The small slime creature makes a noise. The chimera turns its attention to the slime. Yuito spots a large wooden stake embedded in the beast's side. He realizes this injury is the reason for its uncontrolled rage. Yuito shouts to the villagers that he has a proposal. He stands before the beast and yells that they should make a deal. He explains that he can keep the situation under control in exchange for his and Koron's freedom. The villagers are skeptical, refusing to trust a human's proposal. The village chief overrides the others and agrees to the deal. Yuito's expression hardens with determination. He approaches the beast, deciding he can perform a skin incision. The chief asks what he intends to do. Yuito calmly states his intention to remove the foreign object. The villagers are shocked at the idea of touching the forest god. He turns to Koron and asks for her help. She enthusiastically agrees to assist him. Yuito remarks that he doesn't like to refuse a call to duty. He tells Koron he will treat anyone who comes to him for help, whether they are an evil person or a god. He prepares a bottle of physiological saline solution. He reaffirms his identity, after all he is a doctor. He begins cleaning the wound with the solution. The beast roars in pain. The beast and the snake thrash wildly from the stinging solution. Yuito apologizes, asking them to endure it for a bit longer. He administers an injection of lidocaine to numb the area. He administers midazolam, a sedative, to calm the restless beast. He expresses his relief as the sedative takes effect and the creature falls asleep. He then prepares a razor. He explains that he must shave the area to prevent infection, but is unsure if a suture will hold. Yuito closely inspects the embedded object. He explains to Koron that the spear has a barb, making simple extraction impossible. He laments the lack of a proper operating room for such a procedure. He uses povidone to disinfect the surgical site. He then places a sterile drape over the area. He calls to Koron for assistance. He instructs her to create a makeshift scalpel by attaching a blade to a rod with forceps. The tool for the job is a scalpel replacement blade with detachable forceps. Koron carefully handles the sharp blade as instructed. She carefully clicks the blade into place. He gives her the final instruction to move it to the left. She thanks him and proudly announces that the tool is ready. Yuito tells Koron that he will be treating the beast alone from now on. Koron is surprised by this. He turns to the villagers and asks a favor of them. He asks them to wash their wounds with clean water, needing a cloth to apply pressure himself. Koron agrees, acknowledging that it's not too much to ask after all that has happened. Koron's eyes shine with determination. A villager agrees to prepare the water and cloth. Koron thanks them and runs off to help. With his assistant gone, Yuito turns to the beast and announces that the foreign material removal is about to begin. Korone looks up in wonder, questioning the identity of this forest god. The elder confirms it, telling Korone that the forest god is the very reason they are able to live in this place. He elaborates that the creature uses its strength and a curse to fend off their enemies. Yuito, dressed in his makeshift surgical gear, listens intently, his eyes widening at the mention of a curse. The elder's voice warns that those who touch the beast will be cursed. He concludes that for this reason, no one should approach the fallen creature. Yuito observes that the spear has a barb stuck in the flesh, preventing a simple extraction. He mentally diagrams how a fishhook is removed by pushing the tip through and cutting it. Realizing that method won't work, he determines that he will have to cut the beast open to remove the spear. Yuito feels the tense skin around the spear's entry point. His eyes focus, identifying the spear's troublesome barb. With intense focus, he begins to make an incision with his scalpel. He expresses relief that he got through, noting the skin's firmness is like a human's. His eyes are wide with concentration as he gets closer to the tip. He continues the incision, steadily moving the scalpel. As he makes the final cut, blood spurts from the wound. Yuito flinches, a bead of sweat on his brow. The spear's barb is now fully exposed within the incision. Anxiously, he prays that the barb isn't caught on anything important. Yuito continues his work on the beast, now focused on the other side of the wound. The villagers watch anxiously, unable to see what's happening and questioning if it's going well. One villager grimly states that if Yuito fails to save their god, he must die. The chief agrees, adding that even success means the human will suffer the forest god's curse. Korone approaches her grandfather, ready to help. She announces to everyone that she will provide them with aid, including her grandfather. She firmly states her intention to treat him. At the same time, Yuito's efforts pay off as the spear becomes loose. Yuito knows that once the spear is out, he'll need to close the incisions with sutures. He bends uncomfortably over his patient, wishing he had more time and a proper table. He begins to wiggle the spear, preparing to pull it out. He realizes with a surge of hope that he can finally pull it out. Suddenly, the beast thrashes violently on the ground. Yuito jumps back in alarm. He begs the beast to stay asleep, questioning how it was wounded. He steels himself, ready to try again for sure this time. He carefully resumes pulling the spear. As he does, dark blood begins to gush from the opening. A villager angrily refuses Korone's help, calling her a slave and telling her to stop her imitations. Her grandfather sadly concedes that she was indeed forced to be a slave. Korone tearfully pleads with them, explaining she doesn't want to remain a slave and knows how painful injuries can be, so she wants to help. The chief reflects that the bleeding on his arm hasn't stopped and that it's probably better than licking his wounds. The other villagers look to their chieftain for a decision. He finally agrees and the group follows Korone. The spear finally slides free from the flesh. Panting, Yuito expresses his relief that it finally came out. Instantly, a geyser of blood bursts from the open wound. Covered in blood, Yuito realizes with horror that the spear nicked an artery. He desperately calls for gauze to apply pressure. The villagers cry out in alarm, exclaiming that it's a lot of blood and wondering if the situation is really bad. Korone and her grandfather look on, horrified by the scene. He presses the gauze firmly into the wound. He pushes his hand deep inside the wound to apply pressure. His face splattered with blood, he grits his teeth, determined to apply pressure. He targets the pressure point inside the wound to stop the bleeding. He lets out a sigh of relief as his efforts seem to work. Korone worriedly calls out to Sir Yuito, asking if he is all right. The chief yells at her not to get any closer, warning of the curse from the god's blood. Yuito reassures Korone that he is all right, then focuses on the need to ligate the vessel. Suddenly, his surroundings grow dark. He looks up to see clouds obscuring the moon, realizing he can no longer see. He knows he has to hurry and stop the bleeding. Turning to Korone, he apologizes and asks her to bring him a lamp. Korone recalls her grandfather's stern warning not to approach the forest guard. But Yuito's encouraging words echo in her mind, and her eyes gleam with resolve. Korone looks back at her grandfather and apologizes. She announces that she is going to help and runs towards Yuito and the beast. Korone brings a torch, but Yuito thanks her and says he needs her help with something else. She responds with an enthusiastic, "Yes, sir." He asks her to get the tool with the bendy tip that she used to fix the scalpel blade. She correctly identifies the curved hemostat, asking if this is the one. Yuito praises her for figuring it out from just his explanation. Yuito then asks her to grab the stick-like object to her right. Korone recognizes it as the magic tool he used before and eagerly agrees to light up the incision. With her light source, Yuito prepares to clamp the artery, knowing that if he removes the gauze without doing so, the bleeding will resume. Yuito successfully clamps the vessel and confirms that the bleeding has stopped. Korone stares in awe at his work. He states that the beast should be all right for now and that he will restart the surgery. Korone asks if he's okay, pointing out that he is completely covered in blood. He dismisses her concern, stating that hygienically it's not ideal, but he cannot delay the operation any longer. Yuito firmly states that doctors do not run from their patients. He looks at Korone and says it's time to continue. He begins the process of suturing the wound. He pulls the final suture tight. He explains to Korone that although the bleeding has stopped, they must close the wound or it will reopen. He works quickly, stitching the skin together. He finishes the vascular ligation method. He announces that the hemostat has done its part. He tells Korone that for now, the beast will be all right. He explains that now they must remove the adhesive drape and place a drain before closing the wound, which is a risky procedure. He asks Korone to hang with him for a while longer. The villagers respond with a resounding "yes, sir." With the final stitch in place, Yuito considers that he would like to check on the healing process later, but it will be difficult to stay in the village. Korone cheerfully congratulates Sir Yuito on his work yesterday. The sun rises, revealing that it is now morning. Yuito, exhausted but smiling, thanks her and adds that the forest guard gave it his all as well. The beast slowly blinks its eye open. With the dawn of a new day, the procedure is declared finished. The surgical removal of the spear is now complete. Yuito falls backward in exhaustion as Korone tries to catch him. One of the villagers thanks Yuito, remarking that he should be asleep, but Yuito insists he can still work while tending to the man's arm. Another villager wonders if his endurance is also a form of magic, but concludes it must be sheer willpower. By a riverside, Korone approaches Yuito, asking if he shouldn't be resting. He explains he's just washing off the blood from earlier. Yuito tells her it would be scary to get infected with some weird virus. The term is unfamiliar to Korone, who questions what a virus is. Yuito tells a startled Korone to hold still for a minute. She complains that the water hurts her eyes, but he insists that she must wash them as well as her body. He explains that viruses can infect through the eyes, so she must endure the discomfort and wash them properly. Yuito explains that during surgery involving bleeding, surgeons risk infection from viruses like hepatitis C if blood gets in their eyes, which is why they wear protective goggles. Yuito admits that he would much rather be in a bath than the river. Korone explains that the only place to find a bath would be in the estate of a nobleman. The information about nobles catches Yuito's attention. Korone playfully splashes Yuito, reminding him he still has blood on him and must get rid of the viruses. The scene shifts to a hut, where the village chieftain begins a discussion with Yuito. The chieftain confirms his understanding. Yuito wants to take Korone with him on his travels. Yuito confirms this is the situation as he understands it. He adds that there is a chance the same people will return to look for Korone, who is resting nearby. The chieftain explains that to them, death is not a rare occurrence. He recounts that his daughter died not long after giving birth to Korone, and her father, a hunter, later succumbed to his wounds. Yuito processes this grim reality, concluding that childbirth and food safety are things they bet their lives on. The chieftain compares their village's high maternal mortality rate to the vastly improved statistics of modern obstetrics, noting things might be different if healing magicians came to their village. He continues, explaining that they have very few youngsters, wounded their forest guard, and have nothing left, fearing humans will soon take over. The chieftain resigns himself to the idea that it might be Korone's fate to leave the village and broaden her horizons. Having overheard the conversation, a touched Korone calls out to her grandfather. He clenches his fist, feeling he has used all his cards for the village, but it was all for nothing. Recalling his own mentors, Yuito tells the chieftain that there is nobody he should give up on. He states that if there is a will, there will always be a way. Yuito tells the chieftain he doesn't have to take on everything by himself. Korone tells her grandfather that she will come back someday. Her declaration startles the chieftain. She vows to repay everyone, the forest guard and herself, and the person who saved them. She declares that she will assist Sir Yuito with his magic. Korone promises that once she is able to heal everyone from sickness and injury, she will come home. The chieftain listens with wide-eyed surprise. Yuito then asks the chieftain where he might be able to find more tools to treat more people. The chieftain considers the possibility of a human country. Yuito declines, feeling he would not fit in with the humans of this world. He explains that his priority is finding a place where Korone will be safe. Yuito asks if there is a place anywhere where many races coexist with each other. The scene shifts, revealing a breathtaking sight, the Hollow of the World tree, a colossal tree that serves as the country of the elves. Within its massive trunk, an intricate city is built into the wood itself. Within the elven city, a large crowd has gathered in a great hall. A figure, silhouetted against a grand entrance, announces that the two magicians dispatched from their country have arrived. The two magicians are revealed, the horned Ekress, a man named Kulnelson, and a young woman. Ekres formally states that they will work diligently to treat the wounds of those present. Queen Melina and Princess Yuno of the Elves explain that healing magic can only be used by humans, even if they use different magic. An elven woman offers their gratitude. Ekres formally accepts their people's faith with open arms. Later, Queen Melina scoffs, stating that to the humans, the elves' faith is nothing more than a political tool, and the compensation for healing magic is just a large tax. She laments that in a world with so much sickness and strife, they have no choice but to suffer for the humans' benefit. The queen wishes that her people also had the ability to heal. The villagers thank the Sir Magician, calling him an amazing human and apologizing for bothering him. Yuito reminds them to continue following his instructions, clean their wounds, wash their hands, and rinse their mouths. The chieftain directs them down a path toward the western territory of the demons, a place where many species should coexist. Yuito thanks him for the information. As a final precaution, the chieftain instructs Korone to call Yuito master when they are outside the village. Korone enthusiastically agrees to the instruction. Yuito, however, thinks that master is a bit much. Yuito and Korone wave goodbye as they walk away from the village. The chieftain watches them go with tears in his eyes. Korone's friends and family wave back cheerfully. The entire village gathers to see them off with a rousing farewell. As they walk, Korone asks Yuito what's wrong. He explains he wanted to check on the forest guard after the operation but couldn't find him. He worries that if the wound developed dead space and began to fester, he would feel bad. A note explains that dead space is a void under sutured skin that can fill with fluid and pus, leading to infection. Just as he worries, the forest guard appears from behind a tree. Yuito is surprised, remarking, "Speak of the devil." Yuito runs toward the forest guard, happily asking if it was waiting for him. He examines the wound and is amazed that the cut is already closing up and the fur is growing back. He thinks to himself what an interesting case study it is, wishing he could write it up. He explains to the beast that while he wanted to oversee its healing, they have to leave now and tells it to take care. As Yuito and Korone turn to leave, the forest guard begins to follow them. Surprised, Yuito asks if it plans to come along with them. The creature responds by affectionately nuzzling against him. Yuito expresses his uncertainty, noting that the creature was treated as the guard of the forest. He decides it's fine, concluding it would be bad if it were attacked again, and invites it to go with them. Suddenly, he is tackled in a hug by Korone, who exclaims that she is coming too. Yuito gently pats a tearfully happy Korone on the head. With his new companions, the forest guard and Korone by his side, he announces their departure, feeling ready to explore this foreign world, glad that he won't be alone. Back in the elven country, a man asks to speak with Ekres. Culnelson tells Ekres that this is more of a warning than a discussion. He describes those who settled in the tree as long-lived beings that hoard their knowledge. He instructs Ekres to immediately stop his treatment if he feels that someone might steal his healing magic. Ekres reflects that by the healing magic given only to them, humans have gained everything. They have gained immense prosperity. And they have gained the respect of the masses. Culnelson poses a critical question: what would happen if their healing magic were leaked to other countries? Ekres's face turns serious as he replies that at that moment their country would fall. He explains that it is a matter of national security. Far away and oblivious, Yuito smiles, unaware that the consequence for such a leak would be the erasure of the human country from the map. A tapestry tells a story of the past. A god pitied the weak and oppressed humans and handed down healing magic. With this power, humans became the most populous race, but soon after, the world was struck by a calamitous disease. The humans who could use healing magic came to be seen as proxies of the god, the rulers of the land, a story that all humans believe. The story continues. The god gave the lamenting humans healing magic so they could grow, but did not want the oppressors to gain that same miracle. Therefore, before the lives of the weak were lost, the god decided to gift something different. So as not to twist the logic of the world, the god chose to introduce knowledge that anyone could use. Yuito, Korone, and the forest god continue their journey together, venturing deeper into the vast and ancient forest. This is the story of general practitioner Amami Yuito and how modern medicine brought light to the world. His assistant Saya looks on as Culnelson declares their efforts futile, stating that neither magic nor herbs are working. The patient, an elf, lies unresponsive on the ground. Saya warns that their failure could lead to war, and she may be blamed for it. Terrified of being executed, she agrees with Culnelson's urging to get out of there. Meanwhile, far away, Korone sits by a crackling campfire, seemingly unaware of the political turmoil brewing elsewhere. An attendant, Yuno, rushes toward Queen Melina, shouting that something is wrong. Yuno breathlessly reports that the human healers have run away. Yuno worries aloud that the healers must have caught on to their plans. Queen Melina understands and decides she will go and explain the situation straightforwardly. Melina begins to apologize to the two demons, but the leader says he has already been informed. The demon leader remarks that they would be in a pickle if she couldn't explain, his expression menacing. Melina and Yuno are brought before a council of demons, including Alec. The two elves look on with apprehension. One of the demons bares his sharp teeth and demands to know how she will fix the mess. Yuito tells the forest guard that it's in the clear, apologizing for having to shave its fur. The grateful forest guard gives Yuito an affectionate lick. Korone points to her bandaged leg, noting that her wound is still there. Yuito reassures her that it is normal, remarking on the forest guard's insane natural healing. After Yuito explains what a case study is, their snake companion is shocked that such important information would be published carelessly. The snake's tail whips around suddenly, startling Korone and Yuito. The chains of Korone's collar are shattered. Yuito chuckles, realizing the snake removed her prized collar. The snake offers what seems to be an apology for her leg. Korone is overjoyed, her collar now gone. She dances happily, thanking the forest god. Suddenly, a small slime creature latches onto Yuito's back. Yuito cries out in pain, surprised by the sudden attack. Yuno finds herself surrounded and fighting off a pack of monstrous creatures. She struggles, letting out a pained grunt as she defends herself. One of the black wolves lunges at a terrified Yuno. Overwhelmed by the pack, Yuno grits her teeth, determined to drag the healer back with her. The forest guard, carrying Yuito and Korone, bursts onto the scene, charging into the pack of wolves. Yuito exclaims how dangerous the situation looked, while Korone points out that Yuno got bit. Yuno is stunned to see the forest guard accompanied by a beastman and a human. She collapses as blood spurts from a wound on her head. Yuito slides to the ground and catches the falling Yuno. Korone asks her master what they should do, and Yuito immediately says he will treat her. The slime creature seems to question the decision to help. Yuito begins his treatment on the unconscious Yuno as Korone watches. He takes out a bottle of cleaning solution, wondering if it will be enough. He thoroughly cleans the wound on her head. Yuito sees that there's still some bleeding and decides to use an adrenaline additive. He calls for Korone, who responds immediately. He asks her to find the right vial, which she does, explaining that the adrenaline will help stop the bleeding. He prepares the injection. Yuito explains that he will inject the anesthetic directly into the wound, not through the skin. Korone watches intently as he administers the injection. The bleeding stops completely. Korone looks on in amazement. Yuito announces the next step is to use the skin stapler. He explains that the stapler helps speed up operations but is banned for use near vital internal structures. Korone is amazed by the stapler's effectiveness, and Yuito explains it was a clean, shallow wound. Yuito feels confident that with this treatment she'll be all right. However, he worries about his dwindling supply of tools. Yuno's eyes flutter open as she regains consciousness. She sits up abruptly, startled and confused. Korone excitedly announces that she's awake, surprising everyone. Yuno touches her head, wincing from the pain of the treated wound. Korone tells Yuno not to touch her wound, and Yuito explains that it's only been treated, not fully healed. Yuno is shocked that the bleeding has stopped and that Yuito sutured it. Yuito apologizes that it may leave a scar, but suggests she can hide it with her hair. She stares at Yuito, processing the fact that this human treated her. Yuno asks Yuito if he is also a healing magician. Korone enthusiastically declares that her master is the greatest healing magician ever, while Yuito humbly disagrees. Yuito states with quiet determination that he will give his all to help anyone who needs him. Yuno is moved by his words. She reflects that perhaps they should have relied on the forest god's guidance instead of the church. Yuno falls to her knees and begs Yuito to save them. She acknowledges that it's an impolite request, but explains that her country needs his help. Yuito simply agrees and asks where he should go to help. Yuno is left speechless and teary-eyed by his immediate acceptance. Yuno wipes away her tears. She tells him he is needed in her country to heal the spitting blood disease. The name of the disease piques Yuito's interest. Yuno describes the symptoms of the frightful disease that has claimed many lives in her village. Yuito diagnoses the condition as upper gastrointestinal bleeding and worries about his remaining supplies. He decides he must examine a patient first and announces their departure. Yuito asks the forest guard if they can ride on its back again. The creature agrees with a happy roar. The group climbs aboard, ready for their journey. They take off with immense speed. They soar through the sky at an unbelievable speed, flying over a vast forested landscape. The group gazes out at the sprawling scenery below as they make their way towards Yuno's homeland. One of the demons asks his young boss if he thinks they will really bring the healer back. The leader confidently states that they will, and they had better hurry up, or else there will be consequences for their captive queen, Lintvium. Alec clarifies the threat with a chilling grin. If they fail, they will kill the queen and then the rest of them. Lintvium listens in horror, her thoughts turning to Yuno. A quiet clinic sits by the sea at night. Dr. Okusawa advises his patient not to overexert himself, reminding him that a good night's rest is the best medicine for his illness. The patient smiles, saying that getting a scolding from Dr. Okusawa gives him the shivers. Okusawa smiles faintly in response. The patient wishes the doctor well as he departs. Watching the rain, Okusawa quietly wonders about the whereabouts of Amami. The forest guard comes to a stop with a heavy thud. Yuno announces their arrival at the Elf Kingdom's castle, where the patient resides. Korone, awestruck by the view, calls out to Yuito. Yuno lowers her head, looking remorseful. She asks for a moment before they enter the castle. She apologizes, admitting she left out a crucial detail, because revealing it would have felt like an insult to the magician's kindness. Confused, Korone turns to Yuito to ask what Yuno is talking about. But they look around to find that Yuno is already gone. Korone spots figures approaching from the castle path. Yuito and his companions watch with apprehension. A group of intimidating individuals led by Alec walks towards them. Yuno warns them to be careful, admitting that these are the people she neglected to tell them about. Alec and his entourage halt in front of Yuito's party. Alec glares at them while Queen Melina, held captive, calls out Yuno's name. Yuno reports to Alec that she has fulfilled her promise by bringing the magician and pleads for him to release her mother. Alec snarls, accusing Yuno of lying to them. He angrily points out that bringing a chimera is a major deception. Yuno frantically explains that the forest guard did nothing more than transport them. A nearby woman with sharp teeth tells Yuno to shut her mouth, refusing to believe her. Pointing accusingly, Alec declares that the elves have broken their pact. He snarls that they worked hard for the elves, and since they won't uphold their duty, they must all forfeit their lives. Queen Melina retorts that while they appreciate the safety they were given, it was Alec's people who broke their agreement. Yuno cries out that they provided them with a livelihood as compensation, which is all their country can do, and yet they still took her mother. Yuno shouts that they should understand how it feels to see a parent suffer, and that she's tired of hearing about safety. Alec's expression darkens as he scoffs at the mention of livelihood. Alec questions what good their livelihood is if it can't even heal the sick standing right in front of them. Yuno is left speechless and shaken. Alec sneers that if it judges people, then it is discrimination. Yuito listens silently as Alec blames the humans for their suffering. As he begins to transform, Alec screams that the elves must find it entertaining to have a monopoly on healing magic while not caring about others' lives. He declares that all they have left is suffering and death, and he will not forgive them. He roars that until they understand how it feels, he will give them a free taste of their pain. Alec transforms into a shadowy dragon and lunges towards the group. Yuito watches in horror. Yuno is frozen in shock. A massive explosion erupts where the attack lands. The force of the explosion sends the other demons reeling. Yuito, Korone, and Yuno are thrown back by the blast. The transformed Alec vows to burn them down to their bones. Alec, fully transformed into a terrifying black dragon, emerges from the smoke. Yuito can only stare in utter shock, stammering at the sight of a real dragon. The dragon unleashes a powerful magical attack, daring the human to try and heal it. A powerful beam of destructive energy shoots from the dragon's maw. The energy blast closes in on Yuito, Korone, and the forest guard. Yuito's slime companion leaps in front of the attack. The slime creature intercepts the dragon's blast, causing a huge explosion. A watery creature, which was the slime, looks on. The dragon is stunned, questioning how its attack was turned into water. The group finds themselves soaked but safe, with the forest guard looking particularly bewildered. Yuito thanks his slime companion as it lands on his head. Taking the opportunity, the forest guard lunges at the dragon. The forest guard viciously claws and bites the dragon. In his human form's mind, Alec is shocked, unable to comprehend how the humans are retaliating. Yuito calmly raises his hand amidst the chaos. Korone calls out to her master as he steps forward. He politely interrupts, asking to be taken to the person with the blood-spitting disease. He firmly states his belief that they should be examined as soon as possible. The dragon watches him, surprised. Yuno looks on, calling him Sir Magician. Yuito states with resolve that he will help his patient, no matter who they are, because he does not discriminate. Yuno is moved, thinking that this person is truly remarkable. The dragon, reverting to Alec's thoughts, is stunned by the human's declaration. An imposing, regal figure arrives, her followers bowing in respect. She is Lintworm, king of the Dragonkin. Yuno gasps in shock, realizing that Lintworm herself has come. Lintworm looks down at her child and asks why they are trying to kill the people who came to provide healing. Alec, now back in human form, is stunned and asks his mother why she is there. Lintworm calmly questions if Alec is even aware of who he was just fighting. Alec scoffs, stating it was just the chimera and that he wouldn't have struggled against it. Lintworm looks at him knowingly, saying it appears she made the right choice in coming here, which confuses Alec. Lintworm's gaze is sharp and knowing. Yuito, Yuno, and Korone look on with apprehension. Lintworm calmly walks past the forest guard toward Yuito's party. She gets very close to them, her gaze intense. Lintworm gently touches the slime creature on Yuito's head. She says it has been a while. She greets the creature as elder, shocking Yuito. The slime creature seems to puff up in acknowledgement. Lintworm kneels and apologizes, stating the incident was her fault and asking how she can make it up to them. She turns and commands her followers to release the queen, apologizing to Queen Melina for her children's behavior. Alec shouts in protest, asking his mother why they are the ones apologizing. Suddenly, Lintworm violently coughs up black blood. Yuito looks on in shock. Alec is horrified by his mother's sudden turn. She collapses, blood pouring from her mouth. As Lintworm falls, Yuito realizes she's the patient with the spit blood disease. He instructs Yuno to help him move her to a place where they can lay her down. He tells Korone to carry his medical equipment. Alec yells at Yuito, demanding to know what he is doing and telling him to get his hands off his mother. Yuito's expression is one of pure focus as he supports the ailing Lintworm. Alec watches with a mixture of anger and fear. Yuito's eyes narrow with determination as he shouts for them to hurry. Lintworm is laid on a bed while Yuito prepares to examine her. He begins by confirming the state of her palpebral conjunctiva. He observes that the conjunctival ring is white, indicating pallor. Yuno and the others recognize the sign. Yuito states that he suspects she has anemia and may require a transfusion, though he's uncertain if her biology is the same as a human's. Korone asks what a transfusion is, and Yuito explains it involves giving her blood from someone else since she doesn't have enough. Yuno reacts with shock at the suggestion. Queen Melina recalls hearing of people giving others their blood long ago. She explains that those who received the blood died, and the practice has been forbidden ever since. Yuito considers the possibilities, thinking it could be due to blood type differences or infection from unhygienic conditions. Yuno mentions the herbs they have been using. Yuno states that if the leaves of the world tree had worked, none of this would have happened. Queen Melina explains that the leaves possess the power to soothe fevers and pain. Yuno adds that the tree is the very reason their country exists. Yuito holds up a leaf, inspecting it closely. He then proceeds to chew on the leaf. Yuito confirms the leaf's properties and asks how it is used. Yuno explains that it is brewed and consumed directly. Yuito then inquires if brewing the tree bark would have a similar effect. Yuno says the bark cannot be used. Yuito muses that he thought it might be like aspirin, prompting Korone to urge him to share what he knows. Yuito rummages through his medical bag. He pulls out a blister pack of pills, and Alec asks what it is. Yuito explains that it's called aspirin, a useful medicine for calming fevers and easing pain. Yuno realizes this means it's similar to their leaves, and Yuito confirms it. However, he clarifies that for her symptoms, it won't work as intended because it thins the blood, which can increase bleeding and damage the stomach. Korone understands that the medicine would increase bleeding and damage the stomach, having the opposite of the intended effect. Alec listens with a look of dawning horror. Lindworm lies still, having relied on the leaves for treatment. Yuito confirms it could have the opposite effect and advises that they stop administering the leaves as medicine from now on. Yuito admits he isn't 100% sure the leaves and aspirin are the same drug, but he needs to verify. Alec grabs him, frantically asking how they are supposed to help her. Yuito explains that her symptoms led him to a specific conclusion. He theorizes it's likely an internal blade in her upper GI tract and says an endoscopy would be ideal, though another demon questions if that's a spell. Korone asks Yuito to explain what an endoscope is. Yuito describes the endoscope as a tool to see inside the body, which can be used to locate and stop internal bleeding. Yuno is astonished, stating she has never heard of such a tool or its magic. Lindworm weakly calls out to the human. She says she thinks she now understands why the elder is sticking with him. She asks if he is not from this realm. Yuito smiles awkwardly, unsure how to respond. The rest of the group is perplexed by Lindworm's statement. Lindworm calls out to her son, Alec. Alec rushes to her side, asking what is wrong. Lindworm looks up at him and declares that this is the end for her. Lindworm explains that while she'd like to be strong, there seems to be no path forward, so she must give up. Alec cries out his mother's name in despair. She then apologizes to the people of the elf country, saying she didn't expect to cause them such trouble. Alec gently takes her hand. A single tear falls as Lindworm closes her eyes. Alec hangs his head in sorrow at his mother's bedside. Yuito looks on with a troubled expression. Korone anxiously asks her master if there is anything at all they can do. Yuito thinks to himself about his limited options. He considers using Vanaprazan but worries it won't be enough and he can't perform surgery without his tools. He stands before his open medical bag, deep in thought. Suddenly, an idea strikes him. Alec remains by his mother's side, defeated. Korone looks at Yuito expectantly. Yuito smiles, announcing with confidence that there may be a way to save her. As she is pushed in a wheelchair, Lindworm comments on what a naughty kid Alec is, just like her. Her attendant asks if she is okay to be moved. Queen Melina approaches and asks if Lindworm is fine. Lindworm replies that she should be the one asking that question. Lindworm apologizes once more. Alec desperately asks Yuito if it's true that he has found a way to save his mother. Yuito asks if the cuts on Alec's hand are from his earlier transformation into a dragon. Alec clicks his tongue in annoyance and confirms the cuts are from his dragon form, demanding to know the point of the question. A wide, excited grin spreads across Yuito's face as he realizes his theory is correct, exclaiming that this should work. Alec grows impatient, demanding that the human explain what he means. Yuito explains that because of the cuts Alec sustained, he believes it might be possible to treat his mother. He continues that even without an endoscope to see inside her, he might be able to help if she becomes a large dragon. Lindworm listens from her bed, intrigued by what the human is saying. Yuito states his plan clearly. He will enter her body in dragon form and stop the internal bleeding himself. The shocking proposal leaves both Lindworm and Alec speechless. Yuito announces to the group that to move forward with the procedure, he will need a few things and asks for their help. Alec flatly refuses the proposition. From her bed, Lindworm weakly says her son's name. Alec tells his mother that after everything, he cannot bring himself to trust these humans. He furiously declares that he will not let these human bastards have their way and enter his mother's body. Yuito acknowledges Alec's distrust and proposes that Alec come and watch him perform the procedure. He adds that if Alec feels he has been tricked in any way, he can do whatever he wants with him. Alec is taken aback by the human's conviction, asking if he is sane and feels no fear. Yuito confesses that he does feel fear, but what truly terrifies him is not treating a dying patient right in front of him. Alec is left speechless by Yuito's earnest declaration. The group makes their way up a long, imposing staircase. Yuito complains about the length of the staircase, but Korone encourages him, saying the observation deck is just ahead. The group emerges onto a massive, wide-open platform. Alec and Lindworm stand aside, watching the others. Ekres asks Yuito if a rope of this size is necessary. Two guards present the enormous coil of rope. Yuito inspects the rope and gratefully confirms that it will work. Alec watches the exchange with a tense expression. Alec asks Yuito if he brought the blade he needed. Yuito reminds Alec that he had asked for a large blade and that Alec had agreed to procure one. Yuito leans in close and tells a surprised Alec to take a good look. Alec cuts his own hand, shocking Yuito. Focusing his power, Alec sends a blast from his wound towards a tree, causing an explosion. Alec spits a glob of dark liquid onto the stone floor. The substance erupts with magical energy. From the eruption, a large blade materializes, leaving Yuito in awe. Alec hands the sword to Yuito, explaining it is made from his blood and magic power. His hand still bleeding, Alec looks on with an intense gaze. Yuito accepts the weapon without hesitation. From across the platform, Lintworm agrees to proceed. Yuito shows concern for Alec's hand, but is told to continue. Yuito asks what magic power is, and an attendant explains it comes from converting mana, but each race has a different method. Ekres recalls that Alec needs magic power by chewing on a specific resin. Yuito processes this new information about mana. Yuito reflects that it's a weird power that he likely won't ever fully understand. Deciding to strike while the iron is hot, he prepares to draw the sword. He draws the large blade from its sheath. The sword erupts into a pillar of flame, startling Yuito. Chloe notes that as a fire dragon, flames were sealed in the sword, but questions if a normal blade would be better. Despite the danger, Yuito can't help but think how cool the flaming sword is. Yuito sheathes the sword and the flames retract. He explains to a surprised Chloe that a sword like this is actually much better for his purposes. With everything in place, Yuito declares that he is ready. Alec and Lintworm stand ready across the wide expanse. Alec gives his mother a nod of confirmation. Lintworm's eyes begin to glow as she channels her power, preparing to transform. A massive surge of energy erupts from Lintworm. In a blinding flash of light, her transformation begins. The ground shakes as her colossal dragon form materializes, towering over the landscape and Yuito. The magnificent, sparkling dragon is fully revealed. The massive dragon takes flight briefly, circling the area. She comes to a rest, her immense size filling the platform. The entire group stares up at the colossal dragon in awe. Yuito marvels at what an amazing creature she is, noting she's even bigger than he thought. Korone cries out in alarm for her master. Alec looks on with a grim, determined expression. Sweating but resolute, Yuito looks up at the task before him. Alec watches Yuito, his expression a mixture of concern and hope. Yuito shows concern for Korone carrying the heavy rope, but she insists she is okay and wants to help. Yuito addresses the massive dragon and asks Mrs. Lindworm to please lay down on her left side. With a low rumble of agreement, the dragon begins to lower herself to the ground. As she lies down, she coughs up a massive amount of black blood. The scorching hot blood splatters across the stone floor, causing the onlookers to cry out in alarm. Yuito is shocked to see the substance is boiling. He realizes her stomach acid is so strong it's melting the stone floor. He thinks that this is bad. If he triggers her gag reflex while trying to enter through the mouth, he'll be bathed in the deadly acid and it will be the end. The gag reflex is explained as the main point of pain during oral endoscopies. Alex sarcastically comments on Yuito's big talk, now that he knows dragon's blood is scorching hot. Yuito apologizes but says it's too early to throw in the towel, asking if there's anything else he should know about dragons. Alex sighs, saying he hates it, but for his mother's sake, there are two things he can tell him. He explains that first, dragons have shining stones in their throat that must not be touched, or you'll die. Second, their stomachs can instantly digest anything, so getting soaked in stomach juices is also certain death. Yuito absorbs the critical warnings and thanks him. Yuito is surprised to see Korone has already climbed up the dragon's head. Korone calls out, asking where she should tie the rope, and Yuito instructs her to secure it near the nose. She is shocked by the instruction, realizing they are going to enter through the nose. Yuito calmly confirms her suspicion. A transnasal endoscopy is described as a method that avoids touching the back of the tongue, making it harder to trigger a gag reflex. Korone struggles to secure the rope around the dragon's massive snout. Yuito watches as Korone successfully ties the rope. The massive nostril flares, letting out steam. Yuito stands ready with the rope, Alec watching from a short distance. Yuito steals his resolve and prepares to proceed. Korone watches with a worried expression. Alec watches intently as Yuito states that he will now begin. He declares his intention to start the operation to stop the internal blade in the upper gastrointestinal tract. Yuito begins his journey into the dark passage. He's immediately hit by the intense heat inside. A sudden splash of fluid hits him in the face. Startled, he looks around the strange, wet environment. He is shocked to see that the slime creature has followed him inside. Yuito tells the creature that it's dangerous and it should leave. The slime creature hops onto his head, and seeing no other choice, Yuito decides to continue with it. Yuito notices a brightness up ahead in the passage. He pushes forward to find the source of the light, realizing he has found the shining stones. He remembers Alex's warning not to touch the stones, thinking that even getting close seems sketchy. He knows he must avoid touching the pharyngeal wall as much as possible. He resolves to slip quickly into the esophageal inlet. He carefully begins to make his way past the dangerous, glowing stones. He carefully edges along the passage, trying to avoid contact with the dangerous walls. Suddenly, one of the stones seems to react to his proximity, threatening to discharge. A powerful blast of energy erupts from the wall, vaporizing part of his equipment. He quickly scrambles away from the dangerous wall. Thrown back by the blast, he is shaken by the near-death experience. He pants, catching his breath after the close call. He realizes the path back will be just as dangerous. He notes that past the shining stones, the passage is pitch black. He activates his first aid pen light, anxious about how much battery is left. The light reveals large ulcer scars on the walls, which he identifies as looking like takoyaki burns, a type of esophageal ulcer caused by high temperatures. He continues to explore the passage with his pen light. He sees the entrance to the stomach ahead and notes the heavy inflammation of the esophageal junction. He identifies the condition as reflux esophagitis, a condition where stomach acid flows back up, causing inflammation and ulcers. On a human scale, he'd grade it as B. He wonders if reflux esophagitis alone would cause her to cough up so much blood. A medical chart details the Los Angeles classification system for reflux esophagitis. Suddenly, he hears a strange sound coming from the direction of the mouth. He looks back towards the entrance and sees the walls of the esophagus beginning to contract. He identifies the phenomenon as peristalsis, the contraction of esophagus muscles that transports food to the stomach. The powerful wave of muscle contraction hurtles towards him, threatening to pull him down. As he is pulled down into the darkness, he remembers Alex's second warning: their stomachs can instantly digest anything. He recalls the final part of the warning: whatever you do, don't get soaked in our stomach juices, you'll die. Unaware of the danger inside, one of the attendants remarks on Corone's strength for bringing the heavy rope by herself. With the rope severed, Yuito is sent plummeting into the darkness below. Holding the broken end, a worried Alec calls out to the human, asking if he's all right. Yuito cries out as he falls helplessly into the deep, dark abyss. Yuito reaches out in panic as he sees the small slime creature tumbling down alongside him. The creature extends a thin, sticky line, creating a makeshift lifeline. Yuito grabs onto the line just in time, his fall abruptly halted. He lets out a cry of relief, his hand now covered in the creature's slime. Yuito slides uncontrollably down a fleshy passage, realizing he is heading straight for stomach acid. He panics, thinking that going in would be bad, and that he desperately needs a foothold. His foot plunges into the pool of acid at the bottom of the passage. His eyes widen in horror at the contact. The acid immediately sizzles and begins to dissolve his shoe. Having narrowly avoided complete submersion, Yuito catches his breath. Yuito jumps to safety, thinking about how risky the situation was. He looks at his dissolving shoe and reflects that if he hadn't moved properly, he would have died. Overwhelmed with relief, he holds the slime creature and thanks it profusely, exclaiming that he is alive because of it. He holds the creature, apologizing for the trouble he caused. With genuine emotion, he thanks it again. The creature seems to react positively to the new name. Yuito admits he isn't sure of the creature's name. He remembers Mrs. Lintworm referring to it as Elder. Since it doesn't have a name, he suggests calling it El for short, hoping it doesn't mind. El happily zips around Yuito, who laughs in response. Yuito looks on with a newfound fondness for his little companion. From inside, Yuito announces that it's time to move on. Alec feels the rope move, confirming Yuito is proceeding. He grows anxious, muttering to himself about why he has to be the one holding the rope. Now inside the stomach, Yuito begins his medical examination. A diagram illustrates the internal anatomy of the stomach and Yuito's position within it. He spots a trickle of blood flowing down the stomach wall. Yuito deduces the culprit must be just ahead. He notes that since it is not stomach acid, he will not melt, but he will avoid the slippery patch as he moves forward. His light illuminates a massive, dark growth ahead. He and El cry out in alarm as he loses his footing. He observes that the blood looks freshly bled and is more likely blood than stomach acid. This confirms to him that they are very close to the source of the bleeding. He gets a clear view of the massive spherical growth. Based on the irregularity of its surface, Yuito identifies it as a Yamada type 4 polyp. With grim certainty, Yuito makes a horrifying diagnosis. The growth is a malignant neoplasm. It's cancer. Outside, Lindworm lies weakened. Alec waits with a worried expression. A man named Sir Culnelson complains about living in a shithole and asks where the roads are. His female companion calmly explains that they are less likely to be found in the thickets. He angrily retorts that it's someone else's fault, that he has to be the one hiding. The woman asks why their magic is not working. She wonders why their purification magic, regeneration magic, and even the leaves of the world tree have no effect. Her companion callously dismisses her concern about the disease. Sir Culnelson coldly states that the disease is simply an incurable dud and the monster suffering from it is just unfortunate. His companion listens, looking troubled. His companion points out that Eccles heals most people with the spitting blood disease. Culnelson angrily retorts that Eccles is an anomaly and should not be used as a standard. He insists that normally no one can heal that kind of disease. The woman remains hopeful, thinking that if Eccles can do it, there must be a way. Suddenly, another companion shouts a warning to Sir Culnelson that a pack of black wolves is in front of them. Yuito observes that the tumor is large. He wonders if he should treat it the same as a human's. He determines that the huge tumor is causing the anemia from blood loss, and since the stalk is visible, he must remove it. Yuito laments that he doesn't have the proper tools, which would be too small anyway. He decides he can ligate the stalk with the robust rope he has. However, he worries that he lacks the crucial strength, and that if he can't stop the hemorrhage, it will be disastrous. He thinks about the sword, noting that while he could use its flames to cauterize an ulcer, he's not sure if he can safely remove the tumor that way. A diagram explains the function of an electrocauter, which can both incise and cause hemostasis. Yuito worries about what will happen if hemostasis is insufficient. He reflects that if blood inundates her stomach, the already anemic Mrs. Lindworm will most likely not survive. He realizes it has to be done now, as returning for more tools is not an option, and Mrs. Lindworm's condition will only become more dangerous. Knowing the severe risks of progressing stomach cancer, he understands he has to do something now. With determined eyes, Yuito begins. He uses a special technique to create duplicates of himself, and together they wrap the rope around the tumor's stalk. He prepares to ligate the stalk with a square knot, knowing he'll have to use as much force as possible. A diagram explains surgical ligation and various knots, noting the square knot is difficult to untie and effective for stopping bleeding. Yuito strains with all his might to tighten the rope. He grits his teeth in frustration, realizing the blood is still coming out and hasn't been cut off yet. He pulls harder, straining against the immense pressure. He sees the tumor's color changing from red to purple, a sign that he's succeeding, and pushes himself to hold on despite his shaking hands. Suddenly, the trionel's head cracks and extends with surprising speed. The branch wraps around the rope, adding its strength to Yuito's. Yuito is amazed, realizing El can control the tree on its head. Thanking his companion, he tells El they need just one more tug to finish the job. Yuito inspects the ligated tumor, his light illuminating their work. He confirms the square knot looks fine and has stopped the bleeding. With the first step complete, he readies himself for what's next. He draws the fiery sword, preparing to excise the tumor. The flaming blade cuts into the stalk. Acknowledging the sword can't fully compare to an electrocauter, Yuito resolves that it will work. He begins to carefully slice into the tumor's stalk, noting its soft texture. The ground trembles from the effects of the internal surgery. Alec grows increasingly impatient, demanding to know why it's taking so long. Coronet tries to reassure him, telling him to calm down and that her master will definitely save his mother. Alec scoffs at her confidence, asking what she is basing it on and warning that she's not getting off scot-free if the human fails. Coronet proudly states she has a basis for her trust. Her master is the amazing person who saved her life. Alec asks if she also had the spitting blood disease, and when she says no, he questions how he can trust her assessment. Ekres steps in, reminding Alec that Yuito also saved Yuno, to whom he had no relation. She expresses her own deep hope that his mother, whom she has known for lifetimes, is able to pull through. Alec is taken aback by her words. Ekres tells Alec she understands his frustration, But for now they must wait and believe, as his mother is also fighting. She places a comforting hand on his, and they look on with shared concern. Suddenly, a torrent of black blood erupts from Lintworm's body, signaling the violent expulsion of the cancerous tumor. With the ligation complete, Yuito draws the sword to sever the tumor's stalk. He cries out in shock as the blade cuts cleanly through. The massive growth plummets into the depths below. Yuito is pulled down with it, falling into the darkness. He realizes with horror that he's been caught in a torrent of arterial bleeding. Swept away by the current, he realizes he's heading straight for the stomach acid below. Alec yells for Coronet and the others to watch out as Lintworm's body thrashes violently. A massive shockwave erupts from the dragon. The severed rope flies out of Lintworm's nostril, shocking Coronet. Seeing his mother in agony, Alec cries out her name. Coronet panics, realizing her master is now trapped inside. Alec examines the fluid on the ground, noting that it's mostly cold blood, not stomach acid. A small dragon form of Alec emerges, filled with power. He worries that his mother's body temperature is dropping and that she'll die at this rate. He resolves that he can't sit still any longer. Coronet looks on in surprise. The small dragon flies towards his mother. He prepares to act as Coronet watches in disbelief. The onlookers cry out, begging the young boss to stop, insisting his mother wouldn't want this. Ekres explains that dragons absorb mana from the air, but when weakened, they can't. She deduces that Alec intends to produce the same mana as a fire dragon to save her. Ekres elaborates on the danger. By giving his own mana, Alec is depleting his own life force. Just like losing too much blood, losing too much mana will lead to death. The small dragon gasps in exertion. The onlookers plead with the young boss to stop, fearing he'll collapse. Alec feels helpless, lamenting that he can't do anything. He feels useless as his mother dies before his eyes. Despite his despair, Alec grits his teeth, determined that he has to do something. The others can only watch on in concern. Alec sends a desperate plea to the human inside, stating he has no choice but to trust him. He resolves that if Yuito is dead, then he's just heading to the grave in vain. Coronet prays for Yuito's safety. Inside the torrent, Yuito finds himself enveloped in a protective, glowing aura. Submerged in the fluid, Yuito is shocked to find himself unharmed. Alec's voice reaches Yuito telepathically, thanking him for protecting him again. Yuito realizes he's fine even in the stomach acid. Alec warns that the protection won't hold for long. Alec urges him to hurry. Yuito then notices his rope is gone, caught in the current. Yuito decides he must first confirm the state of the tumor's stem. He realizes the gushing blood is diluting the stomach acid, which is the only reason he can survive, but also the reason he's in this situation to begin with. He observes the bleeding wound. He realizes that if the blood flow slows even slightly, her blood pressure could drop. This could send her into shock. As explained by a medical text, hemorrhagic shock is a life-threatening condition. Seeing the blood flow slowing, Yuito knows this is his chance to act. He needs to cauterize the exposed blood vessels, but he can't find his blade. He spots the blade nearby. Retrieving it, he readies himself, declaring that he is resuming the surgery. Yuito focuses his energy. He aims to hit the bleeding area without piercing through the stomach wall. With a powerful strike, he hits his mark. The blood pressure is stabilizing, even though he's using all his power. He struggles against the force, knowing that if he messes up, he'll be pushed back. The dragon groans in pain from the procedure, and the force of the cauterization throws Alec back. Coronet cries out that Lintworm is in pain. Alec cries out as he crumbles to the ground, his energy spent. Inside, he calls out for his mother. Lying on the ground, Alec states that this is as far as he can go. He looks up in shock. The small dragon form inside calls out for the human. The mana transfer stops. The onlookers declare that this is the end, as the young boss has run out of mana. Coronet can only watch, her face etched with despair. Inside, a buzzing sound signifies the success of the thermal coagulation. A detailed explanation of the medical procedure and its risks appears, highlighting the danger of gastric perforation. Yuito notes that the bleeding has stopped. He concludes that the treatment is over for now. He sees his small companion, L, is exhausted and thanks it, promising it drinks when it wakes up. He recovers from his exhaustion and finds his penlight. He sees the area is filled with evaporated blood and smoke, and knows he needs to leave. He realizes with dawning horror that he has no rope to get out. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifts violently. He is startled by the sudden movement, wondering if something is happening again. A voice asks if he is back. In a surreal shift, Yuito finds himself on a park bench next to a colleague, who asks if he slept much. Yuito, still dazed, says he's back. His colleague then asks him, Amami, why he pushes himself to such lengths. Lintvium's body rumbles. She violently coughs up the massive tumor. It lands with a heavy thud, shocking the onlookers. The force of the expulsion throws Alec back. He lies exhausted in the dust. He calls out for his mother as his followers rush to his side. Small, bat-like creatures fly out of the dragon's mouth. Alec looks on in absolute terror. The crowd watches as the creatures fly away, calling out for their mother. Coronet looks on, stunned and worried. Coronet stands before the massive dragon, noting with a heavy heart that her master still hasn't come out yet. Just as Coronet calls her name, Yuito struggles to push his way out from between the dragon's lips. He announces his return. Coronet cries out his name in relief. Alec rushes forward, demanding to know what's wrong with his mother. Yuito explains that they were coughed up together and that the mass was the cause of her illness. Yuito reassures a stunned Alec that his mother is all right now. Lintvium slowly opens her eye and weakly calls out to her son. The surreal scene on the bench flashes again, showing Yuito's flustered reaction. Overcome with emotion, Alec cries tears of relief. Yuito smiles brightly, musing that things are much better when everyone's healthy. He announces the successful completion of the upper gastrointestinal hemostasis and gastric tumor resection surgery. A lively celebration is underway, with many different races mingling and enjoying themselves. On a dais overlooking the crowd, the Elven Queen addresses her subjects. She turns to a younger elf Yuno with a proposal. The Queen suggests that they should call for Sir Amami. Yuito and Coronet watch the unfolding battle with serious expressions. A large, dark dragon-like creature announces its attack. It unleashes a powerful blast of energy, roaring for its enemy to eat this. A massive explosion engulfs the target. Yuito notes the intense heat radiating from the aftermath. The creature triumphantly asks if the bacteria Yuito hates are now dead. Yuito confirms they are, but sadly notes that the scalpel blade was also destroyed. Yuito thoughtfully considers the outcome, believing that sterilization by fire might have been overkill. A text box provides a detailed definition of sterilization and its various synonyms and effects. Coronet admits to her master that she still doesn't quite grasp the concept of bacteria, viruses, and germs. The creature asks if there are truly things that cannot be seen, confident in its own excellent vision. Yuito acknowledges that while he can't be certain in this new world, he is interested and determined to one day prove the existence of microorganisms. Anyway, he turns with a warm smile and thanks Alec for staying by his side. Alec clicks his tongue in annoyance. He tells Yuito there's no need for thanks, as his attempt to help didn't go well. Yuito's attention is drawn to Alec's heavily bandaged hand. He tells Alec to let him know if his hand starts hurting again so he can take a look. Alec looks away, flustered by the offer. An elf girl named Yuno runs toward them, calling out to Amami-sama and startling him. She presents him with a fresh set of clothes, explaining that she has mended them to the best of her ability. Yuito apologizes, but she quickly insists that she did it because she wanted to. Yuno urges Yuito to join the celebration for Lintwam-sama's recovery and the historic reconciliation between the elves and dragons. Yuito seems hesitant to join the festivities. Coronet and Alec both scold him, telling him he works too much and has had enough with germs for one day. Relenting, Yuito agrees to go. They look out over a sprawling city celebrating beneath the world tree. Walking into the bustling crowd, Yuito is struck with amazement at the sheer scale of the festival. He exclaims in wonder at the incredible diversity of races present. Everywhere he looks, people of all kinds are laughing and drinking together. Yuito happily exclaims that the atmosphere is just like a festival back home. Coronet reminisces about her joyous memories of the world tree. She expresses her profound gladness that everyone can gather there once more. Yuito quietly agrees that he feels the same way. Lintwam walks through the crowd, looking fully recovered and regal. Yuito calls out to Lintwam-san, while Alec cries out for his mother. Yuito asks if she is okay, and she replies that she is thanks to all of them. She turns to Yuito, telling him she is especially thankful to him. Yuito suddenly asks Lintwam if he can check her eyes. He pulls down her lower eyelid to examine the color, exclaiming that it's great. He tells a watchful Alec that her conjunctival ring has regained its color, a sign that her anemia is improving. Alec anxiously asks Amami how long it will take for his mother to fully recover. Yuito tells Lintworm that it's hard to say for sure. He then honestly admits to a surprised Alec that he doesn't know. Alec angrily demands to know what he means, insisting the treatment must have worked. Yuito explains that there are two reasons why he doesn't know. First, he explains the possibility that a dragon's recovery time is much different from a human's. He gestures towards the forest guard, citing it as an example. Yuito reminds them that the wound on its gut healed several times faster than a human's would. He adds that Lintworm's recovery from anemia was also remarkably fast. Coronet agrees that the forest guard healed quickly, while Alec impatiently asks for the second reason. Yuito explains that the other reason is the tumor that she coughed up. He elaborates that it was cancer, which can either destroy the body or stay benign, but he doesn't have the tools to check and cannot say for certain. Yuito apologizes to Lintworm-san, wishing he could provide a more definitive answer. The group listens with concerned expressions. Lintworm reassures a flustered Yuito, asking why he is apologizing when he did nothing wrong, and resolves to simply push through it. Lintworm declares that she feels better and asks if there is anything she should be doing right now. Yuito's face lights up as he proposes that she have regular checkups. Coronet, ever curious, asks what regular checkups are. Yuito explains that it's a way for a doctor to monitor a patient's recovery and treat any issues that arise. Alec looks on with wide-eyed shock at the implication. Lintworm looks at him with dread. She asks if he's really going to perform that procedure inside her body again, stating that it's not hard to imagine it being like hell for humans. Yuito apologizes sheepishly, explaining that he has no other method at the moment and is sorry to put her through the pain again. Lintworm is taken aback, staring at him in stunned silence. Lintworm bursts into boisterous laughter, with Alec looking on in surprise. She finds his big-hearted and considerate nature admirable, despite his eccentricities. Wiping a tear from her eye, she admits she's really starting to like him and will entrust her care to him. She tells Yuito-san that he can call her Lin, and he happily agrees to take care of Lin-san. A dwarf in the crowd laughs heartily, remarking that it is a rare sight to see a dragon take such an interest in a human. An elf princess calls out to the dwarf king, Normim-sama, who responds to the princess. Normim glares at Lintworm, accusing her of a ploy to ally with their mortal enemy, but she retorts that he has no right to make such accusations. Lintworm declares that Yuito is her savior and warns Normim that she won't forgive him if anything happens to him. Normim, the former dwarf king, dismisses their conflict as an old story, acknowledging her as an ancient dragon. He warns, however, that if she has truly made a mistake, the world tree could come down in flames. He then turns to Yuito, asking him if that's right. Normim interrupts by forcing a large mug of celebratory booze on a surprised Yuito. Lintworm angrily asks Normim if he was even listening. Normim casually dismisses her, saying he just gave the lad some booze. He boasts that it's the strongest booze in the country and encourages Yuito to drink more. Yuito feels the atmosphere isn't one where he can refuse. Yuito finds the drink has an odd rustic flavor that isn't too strong, even though it's their best. He reflects that it's still booze and his first drink in a while. A young dwarf runs up, calling for Chief Normim. The young dwarf Nino says he's found him. Nino cries out in alarm, asking what is going on with this intense lineup. The elf princess advises him not to think too much about it. Nino pleads with his chief to think about the situation. Another young dwarf looks on, muttering in exasperation. A man curses their predicament. He laments that they are being pursued by wolves, dragons, and elves. He orders his companion to check if they are still being followed. The woman, exhausted and injured, calls out his name, Culnelson-sama. The woman pleads with him to use regeneration magic on her. Culnelson notes his own wounds but agrees to heal her. She thanks him profusely. He begins to chant a spell. He suddenly stops his spell, telling her to wait. The woman looks up at him in shock. He explains that he can heal her, but not if he collapses first, then asks if she can only use purification magic. He declares that his own magic is more important and must be preserved. The woman realizes with horror what he's implying. He callously states that he doesn't see any blood and accuses her of overreacting. The woman grits her teeth in silent fury and despair. The sound of approaching enemies fills the air. Nelson realizes with a curse that their pursuers have found them again. A monstrous wolf attacks, and Nelson cries out in pain. He lets out a terrified shriek. Nelson abandons his companion and flees from the wolves. The woman reaches out a hand, crying his name in utter despair as he leaves her behind. A group of elven women call out to Yuno-sama. Yuno excuses herself from the group, stating she has some business to attend to. Korone wonders what her business could be, and Normim clarifies that it's a dance. Normim advises Yuito to make sure he looks right at her. The elven women, including Yuno, begin to dance gracefully to a rhythmic beat. Their rhythmic steps echo on the stone ground, creating glowing rings of light. Yuito exclaims that it's shining, while Normim comments on the beautiful rings of light. As they dance, the rings of light sprout into glowing mushrooms. Normim explains that the mushrooms react to the elves' magic, and Yuito realizes this is the source of the world tree's glow. Normim elaborates that the world tree wouldn't be in its best shape without the elves, and their light guided his people when they were lost. Yuito listens intently to the explanation. Normim explains that the elves' provision of living space and healing leaves are why they are considered a great treasure. He concludes that they cannot trust humans and would rather rely on their country than on magicians, as power is useless without the will to help. Normim admits that at the same time, they think that having healing magic could have opened up a different future. He tells Yuito that he doesn't know what he'll do, but he looks forward to seeing what he brings to their home. Yuito takes in his words with a serious expression. Yuito reflects that he thought he understood the value of medicine, but its significance is completely different here. Korone calls out to her master, concerned. He looks up with a smile, telling her that he thinks he now understands a little bit about what he should be doing in this world. Nino runs into the celebration, shouting a warning that a pack of black wolves is on its way. The elves, shocked by the news, surround the distraught boy and demand he tell them more. A horde of monstrous black creatures relentlessly scales a wall, overwhelming the defenders. An elf with blonde hair tells his companion that backup is on the way, and they should fall back to the hollow, where they can hold their ground. His dark-haired comrade simply replies, "Copy." The blonde elf watches the chaos, frustrated that this is happening again because of those guys. At that moment, a man appears, desperately pleading to be let in and identifying himself as Nelson, the holy priest. A listening group, including Alec, appears skeptical. Amami Yuito declares that they are short on time, and that he doesn't want anyone to get hurt or lose their life. Meanwhile, an injured woman lies on the ground. Lintvium calls out worriedly to Yuito. A young elf named Yuno is handed a sword and told to take care. She thanks them and announces she's leaving. As she departs, an older man and Alec watch with concern. Alec confronts Amami, stating that the people he wants to save are the cause of all the trouble, describing them as arrogant humans who believe they deserve special treatment. He warns that if left alone, they will inevitably harm or kill others. He pointedly asks Amami if he still intends to save just anyone. Amami acknowledges the conflict between his ideals and Alec's words, but he firmly states that he cannot simply abandon someone who is hurt in front of him. He declares that he will not discriminate against anyone in need of help, leaving Alec looking frustrated. Suddenly, Ekres appears through a magical portal, furiously demanding to know where the magicians are. The terrified woman explains that they fled and will not be coming back. Alec grits his teeth in frustration over Amami's decision. Lintvium, however, looks at Yuito and tells him to do what he thinks he should. Lintvium turns to Alec. She advises the conflicted Alec to take some time to think and to stick to what he believes is right. Amami takes off, riding the forest guard as Shia calls out to him. Lintvium asks Alec if Yuito is really going to save them, but Alec remains silent. With Korone riding behind him, Amami shouts a resolute yes as they head off. Lintvium and a worried-looking Alec watch them go. The forest guard carries Amami and Korone at incredible speed, leaping through the air toward their destination. Lintvium instructs her followers to accompany and protect Princess Yuno. With that settled, she turns her attention to Alec. With a surge of power, Alec transforms. He becomes a massive, winged black dragon. The elven captain cries out as he's attacked by a wolf creature. His soldiers are overwhelmed, lamenting that there are too many of them. One of the soldiers tells their captain they won't hold out much longer. The captain roars back, ordering them not to give up and to hold their position until reinforcements arrive. Just in time, reinforcements led by Princess Yuno charge onto the scene. She calls out to Captain Heath, praising their excellent work. Relieved to see the princess, the defenders rally. They charge alongside the reinforcements into the horde of black wolves. Suddenly, Alec, in his massive dragon form, descends from the sky, crashing into the midst of the battle and scattering the wolves. Moments later, the forest guard lands with a thud, carrying Amami and Coronet. The elven soldiers cry out in shock and awe, recognizing both Sir Alec and the forest guard. One of the elves cries out in relief that they are saved. The combined might of the dragon and the forest guard causes the remaining wolves to tremble and fall back. The captain is asked if he is injured, but he insists he is fine. One soldier mentions that Hike got scratched up. Alec observes the scene from above. Captain Heath calls over Amami, who asks to examine Hike's wound. Amami inspects the deep, dirty claw marks. He explains that they must be treated to prevent infection, and Heath asks if he can heal it. Amami suggests it would be best to treat the wound at the castle. He sheepishly admits he doesn't know any other suitable places. Captain Heath agrees and instructs Hike to go with Amami, and Hike acknowledges the order. Amami asks if anyone else is injured, and Yuno reports that there are no other casualties. However, Alec in dragon form warns that it's not over yet. Hiding nearby, Culnelson laughs as he sees the wolves retreat. His laughter dies when he turns and finds himself face to face with Alec's enormous dragon form. Alec's dragon form snatches Culnelson from his hiding spot. He reminds Amami of his prediction that these people would hurt others for their own benefit and that someone would die next time. Amami looks on in shock. Alec coldly considers that it would be best to kill him now to prevent future incidents. Held captive, Culnelson screams a string of curses at the dragon. Amami desperately shouts for them to wait. The dragon's eye turns towards him. Spotting Amami, Culnelson recognizes him as a human and demands he order the dragon to release him. The dragon lets out a furious roar. The dragon demands to know where the other human is. Captain Heath reports that they only found Culnelson. The dragon mocks Culnelson for abandoning his companion to the wolves, calling it a very human act. It then gives him an ultimatum: find the other human right now. If he doesn't find them, he is dead. Panicking, Culnelson decides he needs to buy time to find an opening to run. He points in a random direction. The dragon flies off in the indicated direction. Seeing his chance, Amami urges his group to hurry. Amami frantically urges them on, worried that Alec will kill both fugitives. On orders from Her Highness, Captain Heath declares he will accompany him. The dragon arrives in a desolate, rocky area. Seeing the forest guard approach, it remarks that it came too. Upon arrival, Heath realizes this is where the wolf cubs played, concluding this is the cause of the attack. Held by the dragon, Culnelson looks down and mutters how awful it is. A flashback reveals he and his companion found the den, and he suggested they attack first. The enraged parent wolves surround the area. One of them lunges forward. The woman is viciously attacked by the wolves. Amidst the chaos, someone spots the woman. She is found lying among the plants, grievously wounded and barely conscious. A cloak is gently laid over her. The woman lies motionless on the ground. The dragon looks on. The dragon callously notes that the woman is already at death's door. Undeterred, Amami and Coronet rush to her side. Amami's expression is filled with determination. He checks her wrist but finds no pulse in the radial artery. He then observes her neck, noting jugular vein distension. Amami exclaims in shock. Amami quickly begins to open the woman's shirt to examine her chest. Coronet watches flustered. Amami pulls out his stethoscope from his bag. He presses it to the woman's chest, listening intently. Culnelson watches, bewildered by the human's actions. Amami determines that the woman's breath sounds are weakening and diagnoses her with tension pneumothorax. He urgently calls to Coronet for his bag. Captain Heath interrupts, demanding to know what Amami is doing. He furiously questions why Amami is prioritizing this vile person when Hike, who risked his life for everyone, is waiting for treatment at the castle. A flashback reveals the woman's desperate struggle, crawling through dirt and roots, determined to make it to safety. Amami Yuito determines that according to the rules of triage, the gravely injured woman requires immediate treatment. He realizes that every moment is crucial, and he must provide at least the bare minimum of care right away. A nearby elf warrior is confused by the term triage. Triage is a process used by first responders during disasters to determine the priority of treatment based on the urgency and severity of injuries. The system uses color-coded tags, red for highest priority, requiring immediate treatment to save a life, and black for those who are deceased or beyond saving. Yellow indicates delayed treatment for those not in immediate danger, while green is for mild injuries not requiring specialized care. The dragon, Alec, holds the complaining priest in its grasp. The priest yells at Alec to shut up, and then demands that Amami, as a fellow magician, should understand his importance. However, Amami's focus is elsewhere. He firmly states that the injured woman must be saved first. Coronet questions Amami's decision to postpone Hike's treatment for these humans. Captain Minel scoffs, believing this human is no different from the others. The dragon, Alec, states he'll kill them anyway, arguing the priest's rank is more important than the collapsed ones. Lintvium notes that social status matters, while Yuno points out he only saved Her Highness and Madame Lintworm for his own sake. Captain Minel angrily questions if the life of a single elven warrior is meaningless. The dragon lets out an annoyed grunt. Ignoring the argument, Amami approaches the priest and asks to take a look at his injury. The priest presents his hand, claiming he got burned. He explains that he used too much fire magic. After a quick glance, Amami classifies the injury as minimal, or green in the triage system. Amami turns away, apologizing to the priest but stating he must prioritize the other person. The priest is stunned by his decision. Captain Minel is also shocked that Amami won't treat the priest. The priest erupts in fury, shouting that he is a holy priest and accusing Amami of being a fraud. The priest continues to rage, claiming it's a special honor to heal him. He furiously demands that Amami give him priority. Amami ignores the outburst, his focus entirely on the unconscious woman, locating the precise spot on her chest for the procedure. He identifies the target area as the second to third intercostal space along the midclavicular line. Captain Minel confronts Amami, arguing that based on triage, Hike should be the priority as he is the most severely injured and losing the most blood. As Amami prepares a syringe, Minel demands to know why he is choosing to treat the woman instead. Without hesitation, Amami plunges the needle into the woman's chest. She lets out a cry of pain from the procedure. Captain Minel looks on in utter disbelief. The priest is equally stunned by what he's witnessing. A hiss of air escapes from the needle site as the pressure is released. Amami explains that the woman has a hole in her lung, and her condition is much more dangerous than it appears. He identifies the condition as tension pneumothorax, where a punctured lung causes a life-threatening buildup of air pressure in the chest cavity, compressing the heart. Captain Minel is left speechless. Amami explains that the procedure has bought them some time for the patient, and they can continue her treatment once they reach the castle. He then reassures the worried Minel that he will examine Hike first upon their arrival. Captain Minel feels compelled to apologize, still struggling to understand the magician's methods but concerned for Hike. Seizing the opportunity while everyone is distracted, the priest makes a break for it, shouting insults as he flees. Alec's dragon form swiftly whips its tail around, capturing the escaping priest. The priest screams, pleading for the fraudulent magician to save him. Amami coolly reminds him that all he knows is that the priest's injuries are classified as minimal. Minel curses in frustration. Captain Minel demands to know what Amami plans to do with the man, and Amami calmly replies that he will take him back and examine him later. Minel questions whose side Amami is on, declaring that he doesn't believe the human is worth saving. Amami looks at Minel with a determined expression. He apologizes, acknowledging that his actions may seem selfish. He looks down at the unconscious woman and resolutely states that despite everything, he refuses to abandon people he knows he can save. The scene shifts to the World Tree. A brew made from the leaves of the World Tree is prepared. Captain Hike coughs while resting in a bed. An attendant apologizes to Her Highness for the wait and offers the brew. Amami and his group rush into a medical tent, hoping the pain will soon subside. He instructs them to place the injured woman on a bed, as someone calls out to Captain Minel, alerting everyone to their arrival. They gently lay her down on the bed. One of the elves recognizes the patient. Yuno identifies her as the magician who ran away. Amami explains that for now she is simply an injured person and requests to use the space. He states her condition won't worsen if she can rest and declares he will now prioritize Hike's treatment. The group gathers around Captain Hike's bedside. Amami examines the dressing on his arm. He observes with concern that although the cloth isn't heavily stained, the cuts themselves haven't been cleaned at all. Amami picks up a cup, noticing it smells like the leaves from the world tree. He asks Hike about the pain and wonders if simply stopping pain without cleaning wounds is standard practice here. Hike stoically insists he can take the pain. Amami realizes the leaves are only partially effective against the pain. He turns to Korone, stating his intention to wash Hike's cuts. Korone scurries to get the necessary supplies. Amami begins cleaning the wound. He prepares a syringe with a local anesthetic. He then informs the startled Hike that he will need to widen his wounds. Hike and Captain Minel cry out in shock. Minel questions the logic of cutting him up even more when his wounds are already so bad. Amami looks at them seriously, stating that he doesn't think their current method is the proper way to help him. Amami explains that the procedure, debridement, is necessary to remove dead tissue to create a suitable environment for healing and prevent infection. He adds that by doing this, the wound will heal much faster and will only worsen if left as is. Captain Minel remains hesitant about the idea of widening the wounds further. Yuno looks on with concern, addressing him as Your Highness. Captain Minel admits they still don't understand Amami's magic. Yuno reasons with him, saying that surely he can see that Amami is trying to help them. Korone enthusiastically agrees, cheering that her master is amazing. Hearing this, Minel sighs and relents. Captain Minel finally agrees, entrusting his comrade to Amami. Amami accepts the responsibility with a determined look. He then takes a pair of surgical scissors, ready to begin. With precision, Amami approaches the wound with the surgical scissors. He begins to snip away the necrotic tissue from Hike's arm. Hike watches on, wincing at the sharp, repetitive sounds of the procedure. The other elves also look on in tense silence. A piece of dead tissue is removed. Korone, Shia, and Yuno stand by, observing the procedure with a mix of apprehension and hope as Amami works. Captain Minel watches closely as Amami tends to the now sleeping Hike, his initial skepticism replaced by focused attention. Amami announces that the debridement is complete. He then applies Vaseline while continuing to clean the wounds. Hike looks at his arm and asks if the wounds are okay now. Amami smiles and reassures Hike that he will continue to monitor him until he is fully recovered. Hike beams, expressing his gratitude. Captain Minel observes the exchange, a look of understanding dawning on his face as he witnesses this new form of healing. Captain Minel remarks in awe at Sir Amami's magic. Having stabilized Hike, Amami announces that he will now continue with the other patient's treatment. Amami asks for his stethoscope, as Yuno confirms that he is continuing the treatment. Amami affirms that it is now the woman's turn. Captain Minel reflects on this, realizing that in Amami's way of thinking, social standing truly doesn't matter when it comes to saving lives. Hike rests, contemplating that such a way of thinking really exists. Captain Minel looks on with newfound respect for Amami. The other elves, including Shia and Yuno, watch with smiles, having accepted his unconventional but effective methods. Amami explains that since there is still air in the woman's chest cavity, he will insert a tube to drain it and perform pleurodysese surgery if it doesn't heal on its own. Shia turns to Yuno and announces that she has made a decision. She declares that they will make it here at the World Tree. Shia clarifies her intention to create a place for Sir Amami. She envisions a grand facility at the World Tree where he can practice his medicine. The disgraced priest is thrown into a custom-made cell designed to nullify magic and told to behave. He grips the bars, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. The priest threatens that they will regret treating a holy priest this way and that they won't get away with it. Alec coldly retorts that he didn't have to take responsibility for the priest's unhealable dud of a mother. Enraged, the priest declares that war is now unavoidable and curses the lizards. Alec informs the priest that the only reason he's alive is because there's no value in killing him. He adds that if war comes, they have no qualms, especially since Mother is all healed up, which will be quite a sight to behold. This revelation leaves the priest terrified. Losing his temper completely, Alec lands a powerful blow on the priest. He smashes the cell door, sending it flying. With his allies behind him, Alec furiously tells the priest that he's the real dud. He screams at the dazed priest to get over himself. The formerly injured woman rests peacefully. In a vast library, a figure addresses Archbishop Ekres with news concerning the holy priest and deacons sent to the World Tree. The messenger reports that it seems the priest and deacon abandoned their healing duties and were subsequently captured. Upon hearing the news, Archbishop Ekres allows a small, knowing smile to grace her lips. An attendant watches the archbishop, wondering what he is always reading in his study. A horned woman arrives, excusing her entrance. Shia, a light-haired elf, thanks everyone for attending the conference. She then officially declares the start of the conference. Shia asks the horned woman if she is ready to renew their pact. The woman confirms, stating that everything is fine and that Alec has no objections. Shia insists that the woman's recovery is the most important detail, which the woman readily accepts. However, the horned woman interjects with a single request. She asks if their condition of protecting the elves' country could also include Amami Yuito. A woman with glasses realizes this means they would have to prioritize him over other countries. The woman with glasses, Chancellor Maillard, questions if they are being asked to choose between Amami and their own people. The horned woman dismisses the argument, pointing out that if Princess Yuno hadn't brought Amami to them, things would have turned out much worse. She admits she is frightened to think of what might have happened and strongly desires for him to remain. Yuno speaks up, declaring that she also wants Amami to stay. Shia confirms with Yuno that Amami was her savior as well. Therefore, Shia gives her approval for the pact's renewal and for Amami to stay at the World Tree. Chancellor Maillard pauses the proceedings, deciding on a course of action. She believes they must first ask Amami how he feels about their proposition. The attendant, Mai, understands and departs to bring Amami to the conference. The chest drain bottles sit by the patient's bedside. The woman who was treated for pneumothorax remains unconscious. Coronet listens to the woman's chest with a stethoscope, a worried look on her face. Coronet reports to her master that the patient's right side is making a strange noise with each breath. Amami takes the stethoscope to listen for himself. He confirms it's the sound of her right lung breathing and encourages Coronet to remember it, praising her progress. Amami tells Coronet that if the noise disappears again, he'll have to consider chest decompression and adhesion methods. Coronet eagerly affirms she understands. Just then the patient's eyes flutter open and Amami greets her, noting she's finally awake. Alec appears from behind the curtains at the foot of the bed. The woman, his mother, looks at him with shock and disbelief. Amami is also surprised by the sudden intrusion. Amami explains to the woman that Alec was the one who found her and brought her to them. He smiles, promising that although she'll have to endure the pain a while longer, he will get her back to health. Looking away, Alec thanks Amami, resolving that this is the path he should take. His mother, lying in bed, thanks him in return. Alec stands by his mother's bedside as they share a quiet moment. Amami asks Alec what brought him here, and Alec replies that he looked free and thought to ask him for a drink. After Amami declines, Alec walks off down a corridor with a dismissive HMPH. Coronet seems to be struggling with the stethoscope. Amami asks what's wrong, and she wonders aloud if it's okay for her to use such an amazing magic tool. Amami tells her of course, saying he wants her to be able to use it properly for her own sake. Coronet is stunned by his words. He reminds her about the promise she made with her grandpa. He admits he only has one stethoscope at the moment and asks if she would use it with him. Coronet is overjoyed and gratefully accepts, thanking Yuito. Just as Amami worries about his dwindling supplies, an attendant arrives asking if he is available. The attendant addresses Amami, introducing herself as the Chancellor, acting on behalf of Her Majesty Melina. She states her name is Maillard and that it is a pleasure to meet him. Amami, however, is completely fascinated by her glasses and excitedly asks if he can look at them for a second, startling her. Coronet examines the glasses, amazed that they are real lenses. Amami laughs with excitement, realizing the new options this discovery opens up, while Maillard stumbles in confusion. Amami apologizes for taking them without thinking as he returns them to a relieved Maillard, who explains she can't function without them. Maillard brings Amami before the council, but he states that he also has something to inquire about. Shia asks what he wishes to inquire about. Amami explains that it's about what to do with the injured people. Amami reports that while the patient's wounds and pneumothorax have improved, he's worried about infection from the wolf bites, specifically the risk of rabies. Yuno looks confused, asking what rabies is. He explains it's a life-threatening disease contracted from wild animals like wolves. The horned woman is taken aback, realizing the gravity of the situation. Amami admits he's not sure if rabies even exists here, but given the different races, He wants to prepare for the worst. Chancellor Maillard asks him to elaborate on what these preparations would consist of. Amami requests that the patients be confined and examined regularly and that a survey be conducted to find any local knowledge of rabies-like symptoms. He apologizes for being so demanding. Shia understands and agrees, telling Amami she will leave it in his hands. Shia asks how they should compensate him for his work. Amami is surprised by the question of compensation. Shia elaborates, stating he will be compensated for his work, but wonders how to properly reward treatment that goes above and beyond what their magicians provide. Amami insists he doesn't need compensation, saying he only treated people because he wanted to and has already received enough. The horned woman teases him, asking if he's saying her life wasn't of particular concern to him. She feigns being hurt, calling him cruel, which causes Amami to frantically deny her accusation. Amami explains that long ago in his country, a man named Agawa Shausen established the Koishikawa inpatient facility. It was a place where people from all walks of life could receive treatment. Shia realizes that Amami wishes to establish a similar facility that treats everyone. Amami confirms this, declaring that he will provide medical care to everyone who comes to the World Tree, despite how overbearing his wish might be. The horned woman laughs, remarking that Amami is quite stubborn when it comes to saving lives. Chancellor Maillard excuses herself, saying she may be hampering the discussion but has one more thing to say. Maillard notes that she heard Coronet is his disciple and wonders if he could teach them some of his magic as well. Maillard is stunned into silence when Amami immediately agrees, stammering that she was aware such methods are usually held in secrecy. Amami cheerfully confirms that he would love to. Amami explains that he can't be everywhere at once, so he wants as many people as possible to learn medical care to save more lives. Maillard is visibly moved by his selfless philosophy. Inspired, Yuno raises her hand and declares she wishes to vote in favor. Shia resolutely declares that they will make it happen. She envisions a place in their country where they can save all who are in need. Amami, meanwhile, is still wondering what the original purpose of the meeting was. In a different city, a man chants an incantation. Magic surrounds a woman's leg, seemingly healing an affliction. A hand channels the magical energy. A bright light signals the completion of the healing. The woman cries out in shock and tears of joy. She exclaims that her leg has been healed and calls out to the bishop. The bishop tells her that her leg was possessed by a curse and gives her a bottle of holy water in case it returns. The woman thanks him profusely before leaving. An attendant praises Arch for healing such a grave wound so quickly, attributing it to his faith and prayers. However, the attendant questions if it was truly necessary for such a lowly woman to receive God's miracles. Arch rebukes him, piously stating that God created all humans equally. Arch then smirks, clarifying that his statement only applies to humans, leaving aside all other races. His attendants laugh, revealing that the holy water was just juice made by serfs. A messenger arrives with a message for Arch. He announces that Archbishop Eclair is calling for an emergency papal meeting, surprising Arch. Arch understands and prepares to leave. As he walks down a long corridor, he is greeted by another man. The man, also named Arch, notes that he was summoned as well. Arch greets another arrival, calling him Sol. He also acknowledges a moody-looking man named Comet. He asks the assembled group if they have heard anything about the reason for the gathering. Sol replies that he hasn't heard a thing, while Comet scoffs. Comet complains that he hopes it isn't another PR job for their patrons, like the recent slave peddler case. Arch finds it curious that he, Sol, and even Comet were called, wondering if all 6 stars could be gathering. Sol doubts Mia will be there, saying she always skips these orders for her experiments. He dismisses her work as some charity that doesn't bring in money. As they enter the meeting room, they find other members already present. Fear and Zest, 2 more members of the 6 stars, are introduced, confirming this is a gathering of great minds. Archbishop Ekres appears, welcoming the 6 stars. She informs them that one of their sacred healing magicians, Holy Priest Kulnelson, has neglected his duties and been captured at the World Tree. Ekres states that in order to prevent leakage of their healing magic, she wishes to nip this situation in the bud. The captured priest seethes with rage in his cell. Amami Yuito is lost in thought, pondering his next move. Coronet tries to get his attention, calling out to him. Alec appears at the door, asking if Amami is making something, which he confirms. Amami explains that he's building a hospital, a place to heal anyone's sickness and wounds, much to Corone's amazement. Amami admits that he feels he doesn't have much time. He shows Alec a detailed drawing of a dragon he made for a hospital-related project. Alec looks at the drawing and quietly asks if it's his mother. Amami declares his intention to create a new text on anatomy. He explains that after performing surgery on a dragon, he wants to document its anatomy so that others could treat them in the future. Korone is thrilled at the prospect of healing a dragon. Amami sighs, admitting that his work is still unfinished and can't help anyone yet. An elf woman mentions that she also had a failure earlier while trying to make soap. The group finds Amami in a messy room, where he apologetically explains his failed attempt at making soap as his companions react to the terrible smell. Amami recounts the ingredients he used: animal fat, plant ash, and salt. Despite the failure, Korone says she had fun making soap for the first time. Amami explains the importance of soap in preventing disease and keeping healthy. He reflects on the unlimited things he wants to do, from building a hospital to acquiring the necessary tools, given his knowledge. Amami worries about his dwindling supplies and the difficulty of acquiring more in this world. Seeing his distress, Alec tells him to stop worrying and suggests they go to the pub to talk it over. The trio arrives at a lively pub, and Alec calls out to the owner. The owner, Tega, welcomes them. Alec proudly announces that he's finally brought Amami, catching the attention of the surprised owner. Inside, the pub patrons are celebrating loudly, being encouraged to drink the finest alcohol. Amami clarifies that he has a personal rule to avoid drinking as much as possible. Alec asks Amami if he's a lightweight. Hearing this, Tega offers to get him a non-alcoholic drink instead. Tega suggests they try the ether on the second floor instead. Amami asks Korone if she knows what it is, but she doesn't. A booming voice suddenly calls for the owner. It's the dwarf Normim, who Amami recognizes. Normim drunkenly yells for another drink, warning the others not to get the young Amami into any mischief. Amami is confused by the term mischief. Another patron brings Normim a refill. He then contradictorily offers Amami a drink, saying it's his treat. While Alec objects, Amami accepts the drink out of politeness. He takes a sip, noting that it's not chilled. Amami is surprised, noting that it tastes like beer. Normim is impressed and tells him the drink is called Kelwisha. Normim is amazed that Amami can tell the difference between the grain-based drink and the previous fruit-based one. Amami explains that where he's from, such drinks are called beer or ale and are typically served chilled. The idea of chilling a drink before drinking it is a foreign concept to Normim and Alec. A woman named Shia tells Tega to try it. Using magic, Tega instantly chills the mug. The mug becomes covered in a thick layer of frost. He hands the chilled drink to Amami and Korone, who watch in awe. Normim, seeing this, eagerly begs for one too. Normim eagerly takes the chilled mug and begins to chug it. He drinks the entire thing in one go. He slams the empty mug on the table with a look of pure exhilaration. Alec tells him to be quiet, but Normim roars with delight. He exclaims that he always thought booze was for quiet contemplation, like watching a sunset. But he never knew it could be as fun as slaying down a dune of gold dust. Normim is impressed by Amami's wisdom about alcohol, which Amami modestly dismisses. Alec finds this odd since Amami doesn't drink, but he is intrigued by the idea of mixing drinks. Amami explains that he used to love alcohol and drank often, preferring whiskey to beer. Normim becomes intensely curious about whiskey, wondering what it is. Amami begins to explain that you distill the alcohol from earlier. He clarifies that distilling is a method of evaporating and condensing liquid to separate components and make the alcohol stronger, a concept that fascinates his listeners. Normim's eyes sparkle with excitement, and he begs Amami to tell him more. Alec tries to intervene, reminding Normim that Amami is here to relax, not work. But Normim insists this is important business, as creating a better alcohol is a shining future for them. Amami gets annoyed as the argument gets chaotic around him. Tega tries to calm them down. Normim and Alec quiet down. Normim says he has a work-related matter to discuss, and Amami assumes it's about distillation. Normim clarifies it's something different and asks Amami if he would be willing to examine his grandchild. Amami looks down to see a small furry creature by Normim's side. Normim explains that his grandchild can't relieve himself and his stomach hurts sometimes. Amami diagnoses it as constipation. Normim asks Amami to look when he has time, offering to make him anything he wants as amends for the earlier commotion. When Amami asks if he can truly make anything, Normim proudly states that dwarves are master blacksmiths and craftsmen. Amami says he'd prefer to commission him normally, not as compensation. Normim insists that Amami's skills must be rewarded appropriately, and that he must accept his amends. Alec playfully questions if the old dwarf can afford their compensation. Korone asks if dragons always work here. Alec explains that they work in shops where fights often happen, like the ether place upstairs. Amami asks what ether is. Normim gravely warns him against it, saying he's seen many who smoke it never return, while Alec dismisses his concerns. Unfazed, Normim suggests they go upstairs to see for themselves. The group heads upstairs and Alec calls out to Shia. Shia welcomes them warmly, asking if they are there to smoke tonight. The group enters the hazy room. Shia asks Normim to keep his voice down so as not to disturb the other patrons. Alec clarifies that they are just looking for now, and Shia agrees to let them observe. They proceed deeper into the den. A patron is seen in a daze, smoking from an ornate pipe. The room is filled with people in various states of stupor. The thick smoke makes Korone cough. Amami realizes with shock that these people are smoking ether. Alec tells Amami plainly that he won't sugarcoat the situation, at least when it comes to this. He points out that the patrons aren't there for simple mischief. Shia agrees, adding that she hates sugarcoating things and his pity, and begins to explain what ether is. Shia explains that ether, also known as the breath of God, allows people to momentarily forget pain that even the leaves of the world tree cannot cure. For them, it is a necessary way to find peaceful rest. Amami listens, stunned by the revelation. Amami excitedly confirms his understanding. Ether makes people forget pain and puts them to sleep. His companions are confused by his sudden excitement. He exclaims that he can use it, declaring it a necessary tool. Shia asks if he intends to use it, and Amami confirms but says he must verify it properly first. He realizes with elation that he can use this as general anesthesia. The most important tool for his hospital was right here all along. A tense meeting of the 6 stars is underway. A member named Comet asks if they are being ordered to kill the captured priest. Another member, Sol, objects, questioning if a more peaceful way can be found, but Ekres sternly replies, no. Archbishop Ekres declares that the priest and deacon can be brought back dead or alive. One member suggests they investigate first. A woman named Fia offers to infiltrate, but is told she'll stand out too much. She then suggests they decide who goes by flipping a coin. Fia holds up 3 coins. She flips the coins. The rules are set. They must guess the outcome of a gold, silver, and copper coin flip. A man named Zess makes his call. Tails, heads, heads. The other members of the 6 stars call out their guesses. The coins land, all showing tails. Fia smiles and announces that Zess is up. Zess accepts the outcome. Zess states that someone with better luck is more suited for the job anyway, and therefore he will go. Another member complains that he just ignored the rules. Archbishop Ekres, however, is grateful, calling Zess a man of few words yet accomplished. Zess prepares to depart. A carriage driver confirms his identity and invites him to enter. When asked for his destination, Zess simply replies to the southwest. His destination is the elves' country, the hollow of the world tree. Back with Amami's group, Alec is pleased that Amami found something useful. Amami agrees, but explains that he first needs to conduct a clinical trial to test if the substance is suitable for treatment. Korone is unfamiliar with the term clinical trial. Amami considers who might be willing to participate in the trial, knowing he needs to test it on many different people to determine the correct dosage and method. Alec suggests he speak with Shia again, since she knows all about ether. Amami realizes this is a good idea. Alec tells Amami that he really likes his hospital plan. Amami is surprised and flustered by the compliment. Alec then asks about the tools he ordered from Normim, offering to make as many blades as Amami wants. Amami asks if he can get a large blade, and Alec agrees to get him one. Amami has a realization. He realizes it would be convenient to have a variety of sizes, but Alec points out that this would require Amami to hurt himself again. Alec smiles, seemingly eager to help. Alec explains that with soul silver, he wouldn't have to use blood, a material Amami has never heard of. Alec admits he doesn't understand Amami's healing methods but declares he can help out with everything else. Amami agrees, blushing at the offer. Enthusiastically, he grabs Amami's arm, ready to go. With a wide grin, Alec announces that he'll show Amami some soul silver and dashes off, dragging a surprised Amami with him while Coronet calls out for her master. Back at the pub, Norman decides he'll keep drinking until curfew and deliver Amami's order in the morning. Shivering from the cold, Amami asks Alec where they are headed. Alec reassures him that they are almost there, and he will light a fire for them once they land. Alec points out the sprawling city of Tarstium Mine, surprising Amami, who spots a castle. Alec confirms that it is indeed the former Dwarven kingdom. Amami questions why the city is destroyed. Alec explains that the residents apparently moved to find richer veins, which confuses Amami since this was their destination. Alec explains that Tarstium is the place to go for soul silver, though he doesn't understand why the dwarves would abandon it. Amami expresses his gratitude as Alec magically starts a fire. Alec mentions hearing from his mother that an old man stayed here until the end, prompting Amami to ask if he means Normum-san. Amami quietly realizes that this must be Normum's hometown. In a memory, Normum proclaims his intent to build a hospital and save everyone. A man comments that Normum's plan is grand, and he was thinking of placing the hospital in a specific location. Ekres tells Sir Normum that he is also necessary, and they would be grateful for his assistance. He reflects on his feeling of being needed. Normum gazes upon the quiet, snow-covered landscape, thinking the country is finished. Deeply indebted, he swears upon his anvil and hammer to meet their expectations. Normum asks what exactly they are trying to build. Ekres replies that she attempted to consult Sir Amami, but he was absent. An elf girl explains that Amami was taken by Alec to seek out soul silver in the abandoned mine. Normum realizes they are going to Tarstium for soul silver to perform the dragon's mana crafting technique. Normum remarks that the place is just a pile of dirt, nothing more than a ruin. He confidently states they will gather the soul silver and return, and until then, his group will do what needs to be done. Normum declares to the assembled dwarves that it's their first big job in a while. He tells them to put their backs into it, and they all cheer in agreement. Hugh tells the chief to wait up. Other dwarves announce they are heading to the quarry and the Black Lake for stone and asphalt. Normum asks his grandson Hugh what's wrong and if his stomach is fine. The boy clutches his stomach in discomfort. Hugh insists he was fine this morning. Normum explains that putting your back into something and being stubborn are two different things and tells him not to hurt himself. The boy understands but insists he wants to help his grandpa. Hugh begs to be allowed to work, saying he'll go get the lumber. He runs off as his grandpa watches. Normum sighs and relents. Hugh chops away at a large tree. With great strain, he continues his work. Another dwarf comments on Hugh's good work. The other dwarf tells Hugh he's grateful, but that they worry about him and suggests he take a break. Hugh cheerfully explains that it's just a bit hard for him to poop sometimes. The dwarf angrily insists that's not normal and that it must hurt, which is why they worry. Hugh laughs it off, insisting he's fine. Suddenly, an intense pain strikes Hugh. He clutches his stomach, confused about the sudden pain, as the other dwarf calls his name in alarm. Hugh collapses and the other dwarf rushes to his side, shouting his name. A dwarf runs to inform the chief that Hugh is in trouble. Normum is shocked to hear that his grandson has collapsed. He urgently orders another dwarf to take him to Hugh. The dwarves gather around Hugh's bed, with Normum desperately calling out his name. Hugh writhes in pain. Normum asks Coronet if she can do anything, but she helplessly admits she's not sure. A woman suggests calling for Amami, but Coronet asks if there's any other way. Normum explains that it takes 2 days on horseback to get to Tarstium, all while Hugh is suffering. Hugh continues to groan in pain, his condition worsening. A sudden crash startles Coronet and the princess. The forest guard appears before them, and the princess calls out its name. The princess asks if the forest guard is truly going to find Amami. The forest guard lets out a mighty roar. The princess confidently tells Coronet that she will guide the forest guard, and Coronet urges her to go. A memory of a sick person surfaces, with the thought that perhaps humans can be relied upon. Another memory shows doubt, concluding that they cannot be relied upon after all. Lintvium gives a cloak to the princess, telling her to wear it so she doesn't freeze. The princess thanks them and declares she must reach Amami post-haste as she rides off on the forest guard. Lintvium tells Normum that since Alec hasn't returned, she will go check on him. She apologizes to Normim for the current situation. Normim angrily says there is nothing to apologize for, as his anger stems from his own inability to help his grandson. He worries that they won't get back before midnight and that the boy will be in pain the whole time. He wonders if he is going to lose someone else. He stands in the snow, fearing the loss of anyone else. Coronet watches with a pained expression. Coronet's thoughts urge her master to hurry back, while Amami discusses building a hospital. Alec confirms that with Soul Silver, they can make a lot of equipment, and Amami mentions the ether they discovered as the first drug. Amami states that their next step is to find a place, wanting to push forward despite lacking some tools. Amami expresses his confidence in asking the old man for help with the building, stating he's good at what he does. Amami chuckles, noting that while Normim is loud, he's also very strong and can be relied on. They find a dark and scary staircase leading to an underground tunnel. Amami nervously wonders how long the staircase is, as Alec mentions they've already descended 20 floors. Alec advises Amami not to tire himself out, as he will have to climb back up later. Leading the way with a magical light, Alec announces that they are here. Amami is stunned by the sheer size of the cavern. As Amami comments on how dark it is, Alec creates a bright flash of light, startling him. The light reveals a massive monster, and Amami screams in terror. The ground shakes violently. With the cavern now pitch black again, Alec remarks that he thought there would be something to ignite. Amami decides to use his penlight instead. Amami wishes for a torch or candle to check the oxygen levels and wonders if there's anything nearby. Suddenly, a glob of sticky webbing hits him squarely in the face. Alec calls out to Amami, concerned. A large monster appears, and Alec tells it to stay still so he can help. Amami finally spits out the webbing, thanking Alec. Amami examines the substance and realizes it's a spider's string. The giant spider attacks Alec. Alec notes that this creature wasn't here the last time he visited. Alec furiously fights off the giant spider. He apologizes to Amami, stating that this will take some time. A mysterious figure enters, excusing herself to the surprised group. The woman steps forward, asking them to please allow her to help the child. Lintvium recognizes the woman as a human who ran away from her treatment, but Normim interjects that she has forgotten that. Normim furiously tells her to stay out of it, declaring he can't trust her and will kill her if she fails. Saya insists on helping until Amami returns, apologizing to Lintvium and declaring she won't run away anymore. Lintvium asks Coronet for her thoughts on what Yuito would do. Coronet recalls her master asking for help and confidently states that he would definitely ask for it. Lintvium agrees with Coronet's assessment. She tells Normim she will let bygones be bygones, as she is an outsider. Saya adds that the specialist seems motivated, and it would be better than letting his grandkids suffer. Normim looks on, moved by her plea. Hugh cries out in pain, saying he wants her to examine him. Normim asks if it hurts, and Hugh explains that yesterday the pain was in the middle of his tummy. Hugh continues that today the pain is on the right side, which surprises Coronet. Normim asks the little magician for her name. She tells him her name is Saya. Normim introduces his grandson, Hugh. He desperately pleads with her to save Hugh. Saya's eyes narrow with focus. She stands ready, staff in hand, resolved to act. A man lies in bed, reflecting that even if he escaped, more trouble would likely be waiting for him, and he no longer wants to escape. As Hugh groans in pain, Saya stands over him, observed by a concerned Lintvium and Normim. Saya realizes the boy is suffering from deposits and mana buildup. A worried Coronet asks for an explanation of the strange terms. Saya explains that mana buildup is a curse that causes pain, and she notes a considerable induration in Hugh's stomach. She asks Lintvium to prepare leaves from the world tree to relieve the boy's pain. Coronet arrives with a picture of a brew she made earlier. Saya gratefully accepts, and Lintvium offers to prepare more. Elsewhere, a dwarf announces that he will now commence his task. In a past memory, a man urges a hesitant Saya to hurry up and leave. Saya looks back, questioning if abandoning the patient is the right thing to do. The man insists there is nothing they can do. She believed that what can't be healed simply won't be healed. She recalls Amami's words, how he admitted it was his selfishness, but that he didn't want to abandon someone he could save. With a kind smile, he had told her to rest assured. Inspired by how Amami bravely stood for his beliefs, Saya resolves to become stronger just like him. Declaring she is sick of losing and running away, she prepares to stand against the venom. In the mine, Alec tells Amami to stay back, shouting that he will settle this. He then unleashes a powerful blast of magic down the dark tunnel. The creature spots its target through the smoke and haze. With a swift movement, something is flicked through the air. Amami cries out from the heat and tells Alec to wait, explaining that the creature said something and they might be able to communicate. The creature seems frustrated, thinking it was so close to its goal. Alec is skeptical but agrees to hold back, telling Amami not to let his guard down. The light reveals a pained and disoriented girl. She has distinct spider-like features and appears to have been caught in the blast. Amami exclaims in surprise that their attacker is a girl, while his companion wonders why she attacked. The girl points towards something, trying to explain. She was pointing to a group of small, trembling spider-like creatures. Amami approaches the girl and apologizes, startling her. He explains to his companion that their fire likely scared her, as it was very sudden. He realizes she was just trying to protect the kids behind her. Amami offers another apology. The spider girl looks up, still wary and confused. Alec arrives, also apologizing and admitting it was his fault because it was too dark to see. The girl is still on guard, suspecting this is a trap where she'll be killed if she relaxes. Amami and Alec frantically try to reassure her that they are sincerely apologizing. Alec grumbles about her attitude, especially after he accidentally set her on fire. Amami changes the subject, explaining that they came to pick up some soul silver. The girl presents a large crystal, explaining she took it because it was pretty. Amami confirms it's what they're looking for. She quickly offers to give it to them if they promise not to kill her, even offering to find more. However, as she moves, she cries out in pain. She clutches her leg, revealing a burn from Alec's attack. The girl accuses Amami of being a pervert and asks if he'll kill her, while Alec points out that her leg looks burnt. Amami gently asks if it would be possible for him to treat her. She is wary of his offer, asking what he intends to do. Suddenly, a voice calls out for Amami. The forest god appears, and the small slime creature cries out in excitement. The princess, Yuno, recognizes Hugh as Normum's grandson. Amami looks on in surprise. Her magic is described as being potent against many ailments. Saya pours her energy into treating Hugh, fighting against malicious and bewitching whites. The effort is clearly taking a toll on her. Coronet worriedly notes how much Saya is sweating and asks if she is all right. Lintvium recognizes the signs of mana deficiency and warns Saya that she will kill herself if she pushes any further. Saya is clearly in agony from the exertion. All the while, Hugh continues to suffer. A young dwarf questions if the treatment is working at all. He points out to the boss that despite Saya's efforts, Hugh's condition hasn't improved. Saya apologizes, explaining that purification magic should be the most effective treatment, but she can't seem to exorcise the curse. A memory of Amami's determined smile flashes in her mind. Despite her exhaustion, Saya puts on a brave face, apologizing for worrying them and insisting she is fine. The onlookers watch as she continues to stand against the pain. As Saya begins to collapse, Lintvium catches her. Lintvium tells her it would be bad if she fell, and that she can only do so much to help. Saya looks up at Lintvium, surprised by the intervention. With renewed determination, Saya stands firm against the pain. A surge of power emanates from her, enveloping Hugh. A massive wave of energy radiates out from the castle. Coronet is startled by the sound and sudden shift in energy. Lintvium praises Saya for not throwing in the towel. Saya realizes with relief that help is now here. Amami and his group, including the spider girl and her young, come tumbling out of the portal. He announces that he has kept them waiting. Amami apologizes for his absence and asks to examine Hugh. Saya reports that the patient, Hugh, has a striking induration on his stomach, is burning up and shivering. She concludes with her belief that he is possessed by evil spirits. Amami questions the diagnosis of evil spirits. Lintvium explains it's a common term healing magicians use for things like abscesses and diarrhea. Alec mentions that they use purification magic for such things, though he's never actually seen an evil spirit. Alec asks Amami if it's something invisible, like a germ. Amami muses that if the symptoms are caused by bacteria and viruses, then purification magic could certainly be an explanation. Saya explains that since all bodies work similarly, she judged purification to be effective against the evil spirits. Coronet tries to console her, saying she gave it her all. Yet she laments that she was unable to purify it at all. Amami interrupts, asking them to hold on as he wants to check something important first. Amami asks if Hugh's body is really built the same as a human's. The question startles Saya. Lintvium admits she hasn't verified it herself, as talking about it is forbidden, a fact Saya confirms the Archbishop decreed. Amami apologizes and says he'll just check for a second, having assumed their bodies were similar. He presses on Hugh's abdomen. He is surprised by the extreme stiffness, identifying it as muscular defense, a symptom of peritonitis. As Amami presses down, Hugh screams that the spot hurts. Coronet recalls that Hugh previously said the pain was in the middle, but now it's to the right of his navel. Amami realizes the pain has moved from the epigastrium to McBurney's point, confirming his diagnosis: it's appendicitis. Norman demands to know what appendicitis is. Amami explains it's a disease where the appendix in the lower right part of the abdomen swells. A text box explains that appendicitis was once a deadly disease with a 60% mortality rate until its cause was properly identified in the late 19th century. A diagram illustrates McBurney's point, a key indicator for appendicitis. Norman grabs Amami, desperately asking if he can do something about it, lamenting how long Hugh has been suffering. Amami asks Saya if purification magic is the standard treatment for an abdomen in this condition. Saya confirms that according to the Archbishop, applying purification magic is the correct procedure. Amami asks if it really heals it, and Coronet clarifies that it's instant for weaker evil spirits, which Alec notes is not helpful here. Amami presents a vial of antibiotic, explaining he uses it for mild cases and that it may have the same effect as purification magic. Saya is shocked at the thought of medicine having the same power as purification magic. Coronet wonders if that's what Amami used to kill the germs before. Lintvium asks if they really do the same thing, and Amami confirms they seem to. Norman asks if giving Hugh more purification, along with the medicine, will work. Amami weighs his options, considering the risk of relapse and whether to prioritize his antibiotics or the magic. Amami decides he wants to use ether and asks Alec to call for Shia. Alec agrees and immediately flies off to get her. Lintvium addresses Amami by his first name, Yuito, and asks how he will use the ether. Amami explains that unlike with Linsan, where he could enter her body, this time he has no choice but to perform surgery. Normim is horrified at the thought of cutting his grandson open. Amami explains he will use ether to put Hugh to sleep without pain, insisting it's the only way to heal him. A young dwarf asks the chief if ether is the bad medicine that makes people act weird and fall asleep. Shia arrives asking if she is needed. Alec announces that he has brought her. Normim looks at her with a tense expression. Normim recalls when Amami caused a commotion at the succubus's place and mentioned general anesthesia. He realizes Amami's need to verify. It means it's a dangerous thing that might not take away the pain. He admits frankly that he has seen what ether does to people, and it scares him. Normim declares that if it doesn't really take the pain away, he doesn't want it used on Hugh at all. He apologizes for everything he has said up until now. Then he makes a stunning request to Shia to test the ether on him. He declares he will give his life, begging them to save Hugh. The entire group looks on, shocked by his declaration. Shia administers the ether to Normim. A text box explains the history and function of inhalational anesthetics like ether. Shia holds his hand as he thanks her. Normim grits his teeth and punches his own arm with all his might. Amami, Coronet, and Alec cry out in alarm. The other dwarves are equally shocked and scared. Profuse sweat drips from Normim's face. He laughs, confirming that it's true, he doesn't feel any pain at all. He collapses slightly from the force of the blow. Shia gently takes his hand as he begins to lose consciousness. The test is a success. With Normim's fears allayed, Shia gives a simple "all right," and the group prepares for Hugh's surgery. At a guarded gate, a traveler is stopped and asked to present their passport. After a quick inspection, the documents are confirmed to be in order. One of the guards then questions the traveler, addressing them as Merchant Randono, and asking about the purpose of their visit. The merchant, a figure with dark, curly hair wearing a wide-brimmed hat, states plainly that they are on business. After a moment's consideration, the guard grants them permission to pass. The merchant steps through the gate. Inside a room, Lintvium and Ekres are leaving. Lintvium assures the others they will be just outside if needed. Alec calls to Amami, who then asks for a disinfected pan. Amami takes the pan with a look of dawning realization. Alec holds a glowing, crystalline object, seemingly the source of the power. A cluster of scalpels is engulfed in a bright, magical energy. The tools are cleansed with a magical sound. Amami exclaims in awe as he receives the freshly sterilized scalpels. The process is identified as flame sterilization, a method that uses intense heat to kill microbes on items that can withstand it. Alec confirms there are 3 scalpels to start, vouching for their sharpness and sterility. Amami gratefully thanks Alec. Shia and another companion decide to wait outside as Amami prepares. A girl watches with apprehension, wondering if Amami truly intends to heal someone by cutting them open. Amami seems uneasy, acknowledging that this procedure is a great taboo for their people, despite the assurance that the patient won't feel pain. A group of dwarves waits anxiously outside. Inside, Shia stands by the patient's bed, asking if she should begin. Amami stops her, instructing everyone to first change into the disposable surgical clothes he has prepared. Amami checks if Korone can hear him and she confirms. He apologizes for the uncomfortable attire, explaining it is necessary to mind the bacteria. Amami provides Shia with a special head covering to accommodate her horns. Amami explains that before using ether, they must administer a different anesthetic while Hugh is still conscious, apologizing for the pain. He asks Korone to hold Hugh in the specific pose he is demonstrating. Korone agrees. Korone takes over, holding the pained patient in position. Amami informs the patient that he is about to touch him. He carefully locates the correct spot on Hugh's back by tracing from the iliac crest to find Jacoby's line. Lacking a surgical marker, he prepares to indent the skin with his thumb, warning Hugh that it will hurt. Amami presses his thumb firmly into Hugh's back to mark the injection site. The boy cries out in pain. The indentation is left on the skin. Amami reflects on the importance of precision, knowing that hitting Jacoby's line is crucial to avoid damaging the vertebrae. Jacoby's line is explained as a key anatomical landmark for safely administering spinal anesthesia. Amami instructs Yuno to fill a small bowl with povidone. She quickly complies, adding cotton balls to the solution. Amami uses a swab to apply the disinfectant to the injection site on Hugh's back. Amami prepares a syringe of lidocaine for local anesthesia, warning Hugh that it will sting. He injects the anesthetic, causing Hugh to flinch in pain. Apologizing, Amami immediately prepares for the next step. Amami takes up a chewy needle. He instructs Hugh to report any pain or numbness in his limbs. He warns him of an impending prick in his back. He carefully inserts the needle. Amami carefully advances the needle, feeling a slight throb as it passes through tissue. He continues to push the needle in just a little further with extreme caution. He believes he has passed the interspinous ligament and proceeds carefully. Spinal anesthesia is explained as a local anesthetic injected into the subarachnoid space, a technique over 100 years old. Believing he has reached the correct depth, Amami prepares for the next step. He removes the inner stylet from the chewy needle. A clear fluid begins to drip from the needle's hub. Amami is relieved to see the clear cerebrospinal fluid, confirming the needle is correctly placed. Cerebrospinal fluid is described as a colorless, transparent fluid crucial for protecting the brain and nerves. Amami calls for the catheter. The catheter is inserted through the needle. Amami carefully inserts the catheter to the correct depth of about 15 cm. He then removes the chewy needle over it. He confirms a successful spinal fluid tap. He connects a filter and adapter to the catheter. Finally, he secures the apparatus to the patient's back with surgical tape. Amami instructs Shia to finally put the patient to sleep. Amami insists on a deep anesthetic level to prevent Hugh from waking during the painful procedure. Shia notes the danger of administering such a large dose. Amami expresses his trust in her experience to handle it. Shia acknowledges Amami's instructions and tells Hugh to leave everything to her. The patient Hugh weakly pleads for ease. Shia reassures the boy, telling him to rest easy as she promised his grandfather. She states her resolve, hating nothing more than breaking a promise. Hugh falls into a deep, peaceful sleep under general anesthesia, which works by eliminating pain, inducing unconsciousness, and relaxing muscles. Amami and his assistants see that the patient is fully anesthetized. Amami instructs Shia to maintain this level of anesthesia for the duration of the surgery, and she agrees. Amami announces the start of the appendectomy, which will begin with an incision in the stomach. He designates Korone as his surgical assistant, asking her to hand him the roundest scalpel that Alec had prepared. Korone hands Amami the scalpel and he thanks her. He announces he will make a 5-centimeter incision in the skin around McBurney's point. He brings the blade to the patient's skin. The assistants watch intently. Amami precisely cuts through the skin. Korone watches with wide, nervous eyes. He measures the incision, judging it to be the correct length. The assistants watch the procedure with rapt attention. Amami asks Korone for gauze and she confirms. He dabs the incision to manage the bleeding. Amami calls for the next tool, a pair of hooked forceps. Forceps are explained as surgical tools used for gripping tissue. He uses them to lift the subcutaneous fat. He notes that the fat layer is much thicker than anticipated, attributing it to the patient being a dwarf. He remarks on the sharpness of Alec's scalpels as he slowly cuts through the fat layer. Taking a brief moment, Amami places the used scalpel down. He picks up a pair of Langenbeck retractors, tools designed to pull back tissue for a clear view. He uses them to open the incision, revealing the superficial fascia beneath. Amami instructs a nervous Korone on how to hold the retractors to keep the surgical field open, reassuring her. With the incision held open, Amami picks up the scalpel and forceps again to continue. Korone holds the retractors in place as Amami prepares to cut deeper. Amami slowly and carefully cuts through the next layer of tissue. Korone's heart pounds with nervous tension as she watches. The layer is identified as the aponeurosis of the external oblique muscle. Korone nervously addresses Amami, who calls for the sharp-edged scalpel. She asks if the problem is really so deep inside, seeing how much he has to cut. Amami confirms they still need to go through more layers to reach the inflamed appendix. Amami continues to cut alongside the aponeurosis fibers. He applies a self-retaining retractor to further open the surgical site. He then calls for the Mayo scissors. Amami identifies the next layer as the internal oblique muscle. Korone excitedly asks if they are close to the appendix now. Amami confirms they are. He exclaims that the layer is open. Using peen scissors, Amami separates the muscle fibers. Amami instructs Korone to reposition the retractors now that they are deeper inside. He identifies the semilunar line. He prepares to cut through the transverse abdominal muscle with the peen scissors. Amami announces they've reached the peritoneum. He tells Korone he will reapply the self-retaining retractor and that she can then take a short break. Exhausted and sweating, Korone lets out a breath of relief. As Korone takes a moment, Yuno gently wipes the sweat from her brow and Korone thanks her. Yuno offers encouragement. Amami calls to Korone, ready with the next tools, non-barbed forceps. He instructs her to use the forceps to hold the peritoneum up so he can cut through it more easily. Korone follows the instructions, and Amami confirms she's doing it correctly. With the peritoneum held taut, Amami makes the final cut. He announces they are now almost at the appendix. Just as the final layer is pierced, something suddenly bursts through the opening. The sudden event startles Amami. His assistant's eyes widen in shock. Outside the operating room, a piercing shriek erupts from one of the young dwarves. Another dwarf screams Hugh's name and tries to rush in. Alec quickly moves to stop him. The agitated dwarf yells that while he trusted his chief, he never believed in the absurd idea of cutting someone open to heal them. He demands to be let through to check on Hugh after hearing the cry. Alec stands firm, refusing to move an inch. Alec calmly restrains the struggling dwarf, telling him he doesn't want him to repeat his own past mistakes. He advises that the only thing to do now is to believe and wait. The young dwarf calms down under Alec's steady gaze. He apologizes for his outburst. Alec accepts his apology and states that all they can do now is believe. Their faith rests on Amami, who continues to work diligently inside. Korone cries out in alarm as Amami presses down on the patient's abdomen. Amami quickly reassures her, explaining that it is just some of the intestines popping out due to high internal pressure. Panicked, Korone asks if there is anything she can do to help. Amami urgently calls for the yellow syringe of lidocaine to be given to Shia. Yuno quickly finds it and passes it over. Amami instructs Shia to connect the syringe to the filter on Hugh's spinal catheter, reminding her to remove the cap first. Shia confirms the injection is complete. Following Amami's instructions, Shia injects the medicine through the catheter. Korone asks what the medicine was. Amami explains it is spinal anesthesia, clarifying that he had set up the catheter for another reason besides just pain management. Amami states that while it will take time to work, it should be fine now. Korone exclaims in surprise. She observes that the intestines are no longer pushing out. Amami explains that lidocaine in the spinal space also acts as a muscle relaxant, stopping the abdominal muscles from contracting. Spinal anesthesia is explained to be faster and stronger than epidural, but has side effects like dropping blood pressure. Korone realizes this is the same medicine used on the forest guard and is amazed by its effectiveness. She reflects on her inexperience, but feels she is beginning to understand. Amami reflects that this new application of magic could change the world, but it's not without risks, such as lowering blood pressure and having a short duration. He concludes that they must hurry to finish the surgery. Amami recognizes the tinea libera and considers what to do next if he follows it. He has a moment of insight, realizing that if the anatomy is the same as a human's, the path forward is clear. Following his instinct, Amami successfully locates the source of the illness, the swollen appendix. An assistant looks on, recognizing the appendix. Amami confirms that the appendix must be removed. One of the assistants asks what his observation means. The assistant exclaims that it must be the work of the purification magic. Amami confirms her theory, thanking her for preventing the inflammation from spreading. Shia tears up, relieved that she was able to help. Amami sets aside his thoughts about magic to concentrate on the procedure. He explains that to prevent bleeding, they must first block the artery. Amami calls over to his assistant, Yuno-san. He asks her to hold the instrument steady, and she nervously agrees. Yuno's heart thumps in her chest as she focuses on the task. Amami readies the suture for the next step. He expertly guides the needle and thread around the artery. Amami and Yuno watch intently, understanding the delicate balance required for the suture. With steady hands, Amami pulls the ligature tight. He readies the Mayo scissors. With a quick snip, the thread is cut. The assistants watch with bated breath. One assistant cries out in relief that there is no bleeding, and Amami thanks Yuno-san. Amami explains that before cutting the appendix, they must clamp it to prevent leaving a hole. He instructs them to hold the top and clamp it securely. An assistant watches with a tense expression. Amami instructs them to clamp a bit further up. He then calls for the next instrument, a needle with a 30 vicryl suture. He focuses, knowing he must repeat the process 5 times. With the repeated sutures complete, he is ready for the next step. Amami asks Yuno-san to take over the clamping. Yuno-san responds nervously. He sees that her hands are trembling. He calmly reassures her and she steadies herself. He encourages the team, telling them everything is okay. He prepares the final, stronger suture, a 10 vicryl. Amami instructs the team to create a ligature on the clamped section. The assistants carefully follow his directions. With the ligature secure, he announces they are ready for the next step. With a scalpel in hand, Amami declares that he is removing the appendix. The assistants watch with rapt attention. He makes the final, careful incision. The appendix is successfully removed from the patient. The assistants announce with relief that the appendix is out. Amami asks for the removed appendix to be taken away. He disinfects the remaining end with povidone iodine. He then asks Yuno-san to hold the suture string for him. He carefully pushes the stump back into place. He then snips the excess suture thread. Amami thanks Yuno-san for her help. She responds with an exhausted but relieved yes. Amami announces that he will now push in the stump. He carefully guides the stump back into the abdominal cavity. He declares his intention to use the prepared purse-string suture. He pulls the suture tight, closing the opening. With the procedure finished, he announces that it's all right. He informs the relieved team that the appendix has been dealt with. An assistant praises his work, and he thanks his team, including Korone. Amami reminds everyone that the surgery is not over, as they still need to close the incision. He encourages them to keep going, and his team agrees. A dwarf calls out anxiously. Alec and a group of dwarves wait outside the operating room. Shia opens the door and announces that it's done. The dwarves burst into the room, desperate to know if Hugh is all right. The chief calls out to Amami and Shia. The chief is overwhelmed with relief, crying as he exclaims that Hugh is safe and sound. Hugh is shown sleeping peacefully, breathing steadily. The dwarves celebrate joyfully, surrounding Amami and the chief. A young woman watches the scene unfold from afar. She observes Amami being celebrated, thinking about his unusual methods. Her eyes gleam with a newfound sense of purpose. The chief laughs and tells the others to be quiet so they don't wake Hugh. He looks at Amami with deep gratitude, promising to never forget this and to stop calling him laddie. The chief shakes Amami's hand, declaring him their sensei from now on. Amami accepts with a smile, calling him chief. This moment marks the successful completion of the appendectomy. A toast is proposed for the construction of the new hospital. The dwarves toast to Amami-sensei and to Hugh's recovery. They all raise their mugs and cheer. The clothes that Shia provided offer powerful protection, standing against pain, venom, and various malicious and bewitching forces. Korone thanks Seyasen for her hard work, but Seyasen is flustered by the praise. Korone insists that the master was grateful and said that thanks to her, there was no post-surgery infection. The chief asks Hugh how he is feeling, and the boy cheerfully replies that he feels fine. A woman thanks the group, saying she couldn't have helped Hugh by herself. The chief extends his gratitude to everyone who helped. Shia, Korone, and the others accept his thanks. Alec arrives looking for Amami. Alec tells the group he's not ready to drink yet, as he is still worried about Hugh. The chief enthusiastically promises to build a grand hospital for Amami-sensei. Alec smiles at the chief's passionate declaration. The chief explains that Amami has already left, having worked hard for Hugh. Korone explains that Amami was staggering from exhaustion and had to be carried home. Alec is shocked and concerned to hear this. Alec approaches Amami's room with concern. He enters and is immediately hit by a foul odor, finding Amami still awake and working. Alec chastises Amami for not resting, but Amami tries to explain he was just finishing some soap. Alec expresses his frustration, telling Amami it's not right for him to work so hard and asking him to rely on them more. Amami thanks Alec and apologizes, admitting he was panicking. Alec questions if he was really panicking. Amami explains his deep-seated fears during the operation on Hugh. He reveals that his knowledge is from another world. Alec listens as Amami explains his need to test everything due to the anatomical uncertainties. Amami voices his fear that the success was a fluke and that something could go wrong in the future. Alec sits and calmly tells Amami that he wouldn't mind. Alec elaborates, saying that if Amami couldn't heal someone, no one could, so he shouldn't blame himself. Amami is taken aback as Alec confesses that his real concern is for him. Amami gratefully thanks Alec. Their conversation is interrupted by a series of knocks on the door. A voice from outside asks what is going on. A man with glasses opens the door and greets the visitor, Sir Ran. Ran enters and asks for an update, while the man voices his concerns about recent events involving humans. Ran reports that for now things are quiet. The man asks about a potential leak of healing magic, but Ran tells him to keep it short. The man dismisses the worry, explaining that a known healing magic user was left untouched. Ran questions why they would leave a healing magic practitioner alone. The man quotes the Queen's recent public health advice. Ran is stunned to hear that the Queen presented these measures as a substitute for healing magic. The man concludes that the country is changing, moving towards a future where healing magic is no longer necessary. A multi-limbed girl named Rim proudly presents a new set of clothes she has made. Amami and Korone are amazed, remarking that the new outfit looks just like his usual one. Rim confirms that the steroid salve worked, as her leg no longer hurts, and thanks Amami for the food. Rim asks if her people can stay where they are, offering to make more clothes in return. She looks up with hopeful, glistening eyes, asking if it would be possible. Amami seems hesitant, looking towards Yuno-san for guidance. Yuno-san warmly agrees, stating she will inform the Queen and that they would be happy to have Rim at the World Tree Cave. Overjoyed, Rim leaps into the air, celebrating the good news with an ecstatic cheer. Rim is startled when Alec appears, asking what all the ruckus is about. Alec reminds Amami that it's time for his public lecture. A large crowd gathers in anticipation, their chatter filling the air as they wait for the event to begin. The attendees are eager for the public lecture by magician Amami to start. As a security measure, a guard apologetically asks to check an attendee's bag for anything dangerous. A guard complains about the large crowd and wishes they had a wadget for easier inspections, but his superior tells him to get on with it. One of the guards mentions people who can see through things as a winged woman is checked. The head guard stresses the need for a thorough check, knowing how bad it would be if anything were to happen. From a high vantage point, the masked leader of the night country, Lintvium, observes the gathering, remarking that their neighbors are visiting. Lintvium's gaze is sharp and calculating. Coronet asks a companion if the visitors are diplomats, and she confirms they are. The woman explains that she invited the vampires who arrived yesterday because they were interested in the public lecture. A young woman expresses shock, asking if Amami is really going to share his healing magic with foreigners. The others share her concern, worried that this might not end well. Alec calmly explains that Amami wants to spread his knowledge as far as he can. Alec explains that according to Amami himself, his goal is to prevent as much suffering as possible. The group agrees, understanding his reasoning. With his preparations complete, Amami announces that he is ready. Amami begins his lecture, thanking everyone for attending and stating his goal is to make them more aware of bacteria. When asked, Hyukun excitedly answers that bacteria are the small, evil things that caused his stomachache. Amami praises Hugh for giving the correct answer. A dwarf in the crowd mentions that Normimsan has been asked to make tools that will allow them to see the bacteria. A young boy asks a good question: if they can't see them, how can they deal with them? Amami acknowledges the question and holds up a flask of murky liquid for the crowd to examine. Amami presents the first sample, a meat soup made days ago that now looks and smells awful. He explains that the soup's condition is because of how many bacteria got into it and multiplied, making their influence visible. A boy in the audience connects this to getting a stomach ache from eating old food and asks if bacteria are to blame. Amami confirms that he is exactly right. Amami presents a second container, and a child recognizes it as a strange glass thing the boss made. The audience is shocked to see that this meat soup looks perfectly fine. He confirms it's the same soup, explaining that this swan neck flask prevents bacteria from easily entering. A text box explains the science behind the swan neck flask used by Louis Pasteur to disprove the theory of spontaneous generation. A boy realizes the soup is safe because the bacteria couldn't get inside the flask. An audience member points out that they don't have these special flasks. Amami clarifies that the flask isn't the only method. Food can also be preserved by storing it at low temperatures, airtight, or with salt. A dwarf holding a piece of salted meat has a moment of realization about food preservation. Watching from above, the vampires and the rest of the crowd listen as Amami poses the next question: how to stop excess bacteria from entering our bodies. Hyukun connects the dots and suggests washing their hands as a solution. Amami excitedly confirms that to limit bacteria, they should wash their hands. Amami joyfully clarifies that they should wash whatever they use to grab food with running water. The crowd erupts in cheers, thanking Amami and celebrating their newfound knowledge that will help them prevent illness. Amami bows to the applauding crowd. Lintvium claps slowly, finding Amami to be a very interesting individual. The vampire envoy Costa expresses alarm, questioning if they can really afford to leave Amami alone. His companion sternly reminds Costa that the human monopoly on healing magic is the source of their power over other races. He declares that Amami is a new root of evil they have never seen before and insists they must report to the church immediately. The decision is made to take the report to Archbishop Eccles in the Grand City. In a rundown area, a large piece of debris begins to fall. A small child looks up in alarm, directly in the path of the falling rubble. A dark-haired woman watches in relief after a narrow escape. The little girl thanks her rescuer, who then turns to scold some nearby men for their negligence. She advises the child to stay closer to people who can watch out for her and asks where they are. The man apologizes to his sister for his mistake. Agro thanks the woman, explaining Lena is a handful. The woman asks if he's her father, but he says he's just a local. Agro observes the unusually large crowd and asks what's going on. The dark-haired woman explains that a lot of people from far away have just arrived. Lena excitedly runs to greet a man named Marsh. The dark-haired woman bluntly asks Marsh what he wants and why he's in the slums. She tells him to leave if he intends to be rude, as she is indebted to Mr. Marsh. Marsh feigns offense, asking how she could speak that way to a beauty like him and claiming he's just out for a walk. A commotion arises as someone shouts that a boy named Marsh Nirchin has fallen and hurt himself. The injured boy clutches his leg, crying out in pain. Marsh extends his hand, promising to fix the injury right away. A bright light emanates from Marsh's hand, enveloping the injured boy as he performs a healing spell. The crowd, including a stunned Aggro and the dark-haired woman, watch the miraculous healing. The dark-haired woman looks on in complete shock. Marsh smiles and asks if the wound still hurts. The boy, now completely healed, exclaims that Marsh is amazing. The crowd thanks Marsh, who waves and tells the boy to be more careful. Aggro apologizes to Marsh, saying it was a bother and that they can't even pay him for using healing magic on a simple scrape. Marsh reassures him, stating he isn't a licensed healer and simply does what he wants to do. As someone announces that food is ready, Aggro quietly observes the outsider Marsh before deciding it's nothing. The community gathers for a meal, with children and adults alike receiving bowls of hot food. Marsh remarks on how nice and lively the atmosphere is, and Aggro credits him for it. A group of young men approach Marsh, insisting he take some food they brought for him. Marsh politely declines, saying he will line up with everyone else. Aggro explains that they have felt indebted to Marsh ever since he cured them of that disease. The men plead with him, explaining they are eternally grateful for being saved from the scary, contagious disease and will never go to the red light district again. Marsh tries the food and confirms that it's tasty, much to Aggro's delight. Aggro says he's sure Atna did her best, wanting Marsh to have a good meal. Marsh waves, observing that things seem to be going well. Aggro states that he has never seen anyone fully recover from the burning face curse before and is certain only Marsh could have achieved it. Marsh humbly dismisses the high praise, suggesting that any priest from the church could have achieved the same with purification. He adds that it wasn't his power alone, but also thanks to the holy water the patient drank. A text box defines erysipelas, a painful skin infection, noting that modern treatment involves antibiotics. Aggro doubts this, saying the church wouldn't help penniless people like them, and that they've never even seen holy water. He speculates that perhaps the famed 6 stars would have helped. Marsh repeats the name, unfamiliar with the group. Aggro explains that the 6 stars work for Archbishop Eccles and are rumored to heal the poor and unfortunate, just like Marsh. He asks Marsh if he ever met Eccles while with the church, musing they must be eccentric if the rumors are true. Marsh quietly states that he has never met him, nor even seen him. Suddenly, men from the church arrive, announcing they are investigating a report of illegal and blasphemous healing. Their leader, Holy Priest Byrne, declares it an order from God for the people of the slums to identify the unlicensed healer. Aggro grows anxious, worried that Marsh will be recognized, and quickly pulls up his hood. Priest Byrne screams at the crowd, demanding they identify the healer or be accused of disobeying God. The crowd stands silent and defiant, protecting Marsh. Priest Byrne smiles smugly, saying he understands the situation. He moves through the crowd, inspecting the residents. He begins to sniff the people around him, searching for a scent. Byrne sniffs several people, dismissing one man as simply stinking. Atna watches in fear as the priest approaches. His eyes lock onto her, a predatory look on his face. Atna's mother calls her name and tries to pull her to safety. Byrne's men grab Atna's mother, telling her to shut up and stay out of the priest's way. Atna cries for her mother as Byrne's hand covers her mouth, silencing her. The priest lands in close to the terrified girl's face. Aggro desperately grabs Marsh, begging him to stop and warning him that being exposed to the church will not end well. He frantically explains that Marsh will be arrested and executed for illegal healing, begging him to let them handle it. Marsh looks on with grim resolve, telling Aggro to let him go and agreeing that this will not end well. Byrne shouts triumphantly, declaring that he can smell it now. He proclaims to the crowd that he has detected the scent of holy water. He scoffs that true followers of God would never heal such common people, yet he can clearly smell holy water on the girl's face. Holding Atna up, Byrne shouts that the smell is proof and demands the culprit reveal themselves immediately. The dark-haired woman looks on worriedly, while Byrne threatens that if they don't comply, the girl will be the first to be hanged for heresy. Marsh's expression hardens as he listens to the priest's threat. A man asks his colleague Fia if he should accompany her. A 4th member rebukes the group, questioning their priorities and reminding them of their shared status as part of the 6 stars. Comet complains about the noise, drawing the attention of Fia and the other man. Fia asks if their destination is the slums. The group discusses their mission concerning holy water, which involves securing a factory and workforce for mass production. Comet expresses frustration, remarking that their archbishop seems fixated on the topic. The older man sternly reminds Comet to show respect for the archbishop. Fia asks Comet for an alternative solution to their problem. Fia reveals that a curse is spreading through the town, a rumor she heard from local prostitutes. A woman with a large mace teases Comet about his knowledge of prostitutes, causing him to react defensively. Fia calmly states that she anticipated their superior would eventually order them to handle the situation. Deciding she must act, Fia tells her companions she is leaving and that they should proceed with their own tasks. The older man tries to call her back, but Comet stops him, confident that Fia can handle any trouble. Comet wonders aloud about the Archbishop's inaction. Fia arrives in the slums and intervenes, telling a group of men to stand down. Fia calmly questions them about the unlicensed healer, stating that as a member of the Holy Church, she cannot ignore their behavior. The men react with hostility, accusing her of being a scam healer. A woman cries out, pleading for them to wait. As one of the men kicks a girl named Atna, her mother cries out her name. Fia's expression hardens at the sight of the violence. The leader of the group, Bern, recognizes Fia as one of the 6 stars and sarcastically welcomes her. Fia confronts Bern, asking what he would do if she were the healer he was looking for. Visibly intimidated, Bern stammers that it would not be a problem. He quickly orders his men to retreat, and they depart without another word. From a distance, Marsh watches silently. The slum dwellers express their gratitude to Fia for saving them once again. Fia seems indifferent to their thanks and dismisses them. Fia uses her power to heal a young girl. The girl cries out in surprise as the healing takes effect. The grateful crowd pleads with Fia to heal others, while Marsh remarks on the disastrous situation to Atna. Fia approaches Marsh, whom she refers to as the unlicensed healer. She suggests they go for a walk, mentioning she has things to discuss. Agro attempts to intervene, pleading for his sis to wait. Fia raises a hand to stop him. Marsh reassures the worried crowd, telling them they can trust Fia and that it will only be a brief walk. He then turns to Fia with a smile, remarking that a man cannot refuse an invitation from a charming young woman. The crowd watches as Fia and Marsh depart. Marsh notes that since they are alone in the ruins, it should be fine to talk. Fia demands to know his true goal for bringing her there. Fia presses him for an answer. Fia addresses the man not as Marsh, but as Sir Eccles. He explains that bringing her to a place where they could speak privately was one of his objectives. Eccles reveals his second goal is to give Fia another job. He speaks of a rot spreading from within. He directly asks Fia to lend him her power. Fia wryly notes his politeness during such a crisis and agrees. One of Bern's men is furious about their encounter with Fia. Bern urges his agitated subordinate to calm down. Bern shifts focus to what he perceives as the real problem, the fraudulent healer, believing they can proceed with their plan if Fia's visit was a mere whim. Bern dismisses the 6 stars as youngsters seeking validation, confident their interference will be short-lived. A knock at the door announces the arrival of Sir Bascom, whom Bern allows to enter. Sir Bascom enters, apologizing for intruding on Reverend Bern. Bern greets him and comments on the effectiveness of Bascom's merchandise. Bascom inquires about the progress of their plan. Bascom declares his intent to claim the land. Eccles observes the desolate red light district, noting the lack of people. Agro laments its decline from a once bustling town. Eccles observes the makeshift tents, noting that the brothels have moved outside due to a curse. Agro explains that the curse has driven away all shop owners, not just the brothels. He fears the place will become completely abandoned if the curse continues. Eccles asks Agro if he has spoken with his sister about the curse affecting the town. Eccles clarifies that his true purpose in coming was to heal as many people as he could. Agro is stunned by this revelation. Eccles explains that he only warned the 6 stars girl to be careful. Agro apologizes for involving him, but Eccles says the request isn't unreasonable and that he is also concerned for Agro's sister. Startled by the sudden intrusion, Nora brandishes a weapon. Agro bursts into the room, calling for his sister Nora. A child, seemingly with Agro, is startled by Nora's reaction. Nora exclaims that showing up at his own sister's brothel is disgusting and demands an explanation. Eccles enters and Nora mistakes him for a customer. Agro tells his sister it's too late to feign ignorance. Eccles calmly observes the siblings, noting their apparent closeness. Nora is left flustered and confused. The sores around Nora's mouth are visible. Agro explains to Nora that Eccles is there to investigate the recent troubles and urges her to listen. Seeing the sores on her mouth, Eccles tells her that before anything else he will heal her. As informational text about syphilis appears, Eccles begins to chant a spell of protection. A powerful light emanates from his hand as he performs a healing ritual on Nora. Nora endures the process as the healing magic works against the affliction. Nora looks in a mirror, amazed that the swelling has vanished. Eccles warns her that the affliction could have been fatal if left untreated. He asks about a red rash on her hands or feet to gauge the extent of the curse. She confirms she had the rash there as well. Eccles asks to inspect Nora's feet, much to Agro's embarrassment. Nora recalls that some unfamiliar men, not from the area, had visited. A few days after their visit, the curse began to spread everywhere. Nora expresses her regret, admitting she felt something was wrong but turned a blind eye. Agro laments that because of this, the entire red light district is now believed to be cursed and it's over for them. He apologizes to Nora, wishing he had money to help. Agro is distraught, but Nora reminds him that he always rushes to her aid during fights, even if he gets hurt himself. She tells him not to apologize, insisting she doesn't need his pity as she knows how hard he works. Eccles quietly observes the siblings' bond. With a reassuring smile, Eccles tells the siblings that everything will be okay. He clenches his fist, determinedly promising to resolve the entire mess. Fia reports to her superior. After reviewing a document, her superior, Arch, confirms that her findings are just as she described. Arch finds it strange that fugitive slaves are captured near the slums, but never within them. Fia explains there's a reason they avoided the slums. Arch realizes they must be afraid of being sent back to someone. He decides to investigate by speaking with the slave peddler Bascom, who is known to be close to Eccles. Arch expresses his disgust at the perpetrator's goal of cursing humans and spreading it across the world. Fia tells him that after visiting the slums, she believes she understands the true motive. Fia explains that the new town's rapid growth makes the lack of development in the slums suspicious. She suggests they were cheaping out on development. Arch furiously concludes that the people there were deliberately weakened to reduce their numbers. Fia recalls her order from Eccles to find the mastermind with Arch. Arch acknowledges the order, noting Eccles's absence and stating he will relay the information to Cardinal Cecil Arp. He pauses before questioning Fia's timing. Arch questions Fia's decision to wait until after tomorrow to act, arguing they should move now. Fia listens to his concern. She replies that the delay was also part of Eccles's orders. Sir Bascom bursts into Burns' office in a panic for the second time that day. He frantically reports that Arch, a priest of the 6 stars, is coming tomorrow to disrupt their plan, leaving Burn in a state of alarm. Bascom now believes that Eccles's actions were a warning from the head of the 6 stars, lamenting that he was fooled. Burn is stunned, mistakenly believing Eccles was on their side all along. Bascom notes that while the papacy can't intervene directly, they have been delayed. Burn's subordinate suggests staging suspicious deaths in the slums. However, Burn proposes an easier solution: eliminate the inspectors to delay the investigation further. With a sinister grin, Burn declares they will burn everything to the ground, leaving no evidence or witnesses. His men are shocked by the brutal plan. He calls this a true purification by fire that will cleanse the land and render any investigation meaningless. Burn's men erupt in cheers, praising his simple and effective solution and celebrating the idea of getting back at the 6 stars. Burn credits his conversation with Sir Bascom for sparking the idea. Bascom agrees they must burn the cursed slaves before the affliction spreads. He states that they cannot sell defective products as it's not their style. He offers to bring the special water used for burning slaves, and they agree to act quickly. Fia resolves to survey the potential spread of the flames. The innocent people of the slums enjoy a meal, unaware of the impending doom. Agro grimly states they must burn everything down properly. Burn's sinister grin underscores the callous disregard for the lives he plans to extinguish. A woman explains that the holy water needed to cure the red light district's curse is made from local fruits. She rallies the crowd, asking them to help make some, promising that her boss will purchase it from them. She adds that as a bonus, they will be able to keep any leftovers for themselves. Nora looks on in stunned disbelief at the offer. Someone holds the fruit, filled with the hope that it can save them. Energized by the news, the crowd eagerly agrees to help. A young man offers his heartfelt thanks as they prepare to unload the ingredients. The woman leading the effort assures them that they are looking into the curse and not to worry. Eccles tells the overjoyed crowd that he will stay to treat everyone's curse and asks them to form a line. With tears in her eyes, Nora expresses her profound gratitude. A hopeful thought echoes through the crowd. From this day on, the town will surely change for the better. A woman examines Eccles's hand and exclaims that the treatment is looking good. She beams with satisfaction at their progress. She explains to the group that while the mixture has a weird smell, it will be worth the effort. Eccles confirms her assessment with a confident smile. A few people decide to head over to Nora's place. From a dark alley, Byrne observes them, realizing that if the women are cured, his plan to spread the curse will fail. His eye gleams with malice. He decides to carefully burn the entire place to the ground. Byrne's men sneak through the darkened city streets. One of his men prepares a sprayer filled with accelerant. The man lets out a loud sneeze, startling his comrades. Byrne furiously grabs him, whispering that his negligence could alert their targets and ruin everything. The man apologizes profusely. While his men work, Byrne muses about his own road to success, believing this plan will bring him immense wealth. He is consumed by thoughts of his own glorious future. Suddenly, two women walk by, one wondering if she heard a noise, though her companion dismisses it. From the shadows, Byrne frantically signals his men to be careful and stay hidden. With the women gone, Byrne quietly gives the order to start the fire as they retreat. They douse the area with more of the flammable liquid. A hand reaches out, ready to set the blaze. An enormous blast erupts from the ground. Byrne and his men are caught in the explosion, screaming in agony. The building is engulfed in the powerful detonation. From a faraway balcony, a figure watches the explosion. Sir Bascom and his men celebrate, declaring that the beautiful bonfire has started, lighting their path forward. Their triumphant laughter echoes across the city. The arsonists are thrown back by the powerful explosion they did not start. Byrne and his subordinates are caught in the fiery aftermath. Byrne's eyes widen in shock at the unexpected turn of events. A mysterious figure appears through the smoke, remarking that this seems a bit strong-handed. A group led by Agro and Nora stands ready to face the would-be arsonists. Byrne stammers in disbelief, calling the fire a disaster. One of the women confronts him, stating it's clear as day they're the culprits, pointing to the oil tanks on their backs and revealing that everyone has already been evacuated. Realizing he's been caught, Byrne grits his teeth. He orders his men to attack, dismissing his opponents as helpless. The woman leading the charge leaps into action. Her weapon crackles with stored energy as she strikes the ground. Her attack unleashes a powerful shockwave that sends Byrne's men flying. Byrne is thrown back by the force of the blast. Nora explains that they knew about the suspicious man buying up the stinky water from fear, and they let him proceed on purpose. Nora explains that Eccles advised them that if they simply repelled the attackers, they would only try again, so they had to ensure an inexcusable crime was committed. She declares that even if they lose their homes, it doesn't matter, because they can make the holy water anywhere. Byrne scoffs at the idea of being caught for a crime, still believing he can escape. He boasts that with flames like these, he can still dive through and escape with magic. He reaches out, preparing to cast his escape spell. Suddenly, the entire building collapses in a massive explosion, crushing Byrne and his men beneath the rubble. A powerful force extinguishes the flames across the district. Agro, Nora, and the others stare in awe at the display of destructive extinguishing. Byrne, trapped and defeated, can only stammer in terror. Eccles appears, asking the man if he really doesn't know who the fraudulent magician is. Eccles's power manifests as a magical downpour. He stands calmly amidst the storm he has created. An ornate staff materializes in his hand. A faint glow emanates from his hand. His eyes gleam with power. Eccles reveals his true form, complete with 5 horns, holding his ceremonial staff. Byrne's face is a mask of pure terror as he realizes who he is facing. Byrne recognizes the 5 horns and mole, identifying his opponent as Archbishop Eccles. He erupts in maniacal laughter, believing the heavens have favored him and that with the archpriest on his side, he can't possibly lose. The onlookers watch the dramatic confrontation unfold. Eccles asks who Byrne thinks gave him the time to reign free, revealing it was all for the sake of the girls. Byrne's face contorts in terror as the truth dawns on him. Held firmly by Lintvium, Byrne screams that he was set up, revealing that Bascom told him the entire plan and questioning if Eccles intends to betray him too. At the same time, it's revealed that Sir Bascom should have been arrested by Arch long ago. Bascom is seen defeated and in custody. Arch looks on sternly as the arrest is carried out. Byrne screams in disbelief, insisting the inspection was supposed to be tomorrow. Eccles explains that he had given the 6 stars specific instructions for this contingency. He recalls telling Fia that if he contacted her tomorrow night, they were to move out then, thus springing the trap a day early. Byrne curses his fate as he is overpowered. Eccles effortlessly tosses him aside. He tells the defeated monster that he should have been in a position to cleanse the curse, not set fires. Eccles declares that heaven's vengeance is slow but certain, and as a witness, he sentences Byrne to reflect on his wickedness until his execution. An informational text draws a parallel between the events and the historical Tuskegee syphilis study, where subjects were inhumanely left untreated to observe the disease's effects. Byrne is left broken and defeated, his wickedness exposed. The Papal Secret Service arrives on the scene to take custody of the criminals. Their general addresses Eccles as Archbishop and expresses his appreciation for his decisiveness. The general adds that his forces are available to assist whenever needed. Eccles calls for Fia. Fia asks Eccles why he didn't inform her of the full plan beforehand, but he tells her that's not quite true. He explains that it was thanks to her discovery of what Byrne planned to do with Bascom's oil that they could act. He sincerely thanks Fia for her invaluable contribution. Nora and Agro thank him, and Nora asks if she should now call him Archbishop. Eccles tells her that the same old fraudulent marsh is fine and apologizes for not telling them sooner, blaming the church. He announces that the danger is gone and that they can continue their story tomorrow. Later, the healing continues. A woman exclaims with joy that her rash is completely gone. Eccles attributes her recovery to her diligence in coming for the holy water every day and tells her to drink it as well. As the people thank Eccles, Fia comments to Agro that things appear to be going well. Agro tells Eccles he's feeling great and that they are now making holy water in the new town and constructing workshops in the red light district. They discuss their progress and future plans, with Eccles offering to help them build a field when the time comes. Nora tells Agro that even in this gloomy place, her heart feels much lighter when he is around. As the siblings thank him again, Eccles stops them, insisting that he should be the one thanking them for all they've done. The 3 of them share a heartfelt laugh together. Looking over the ruins, a new chapter begins. Fia asks Eccles if everything went according to his plan. He confirms that despite uncertainties, they accomplished their objectives, expanding holy water production, removing the unjust, and providing for those in need, noting that Bascom's money was also very useful. He declares that the red light district will now become a light that shines for the future of humanity. Eccles admits that without his healing magic, the girls couldn't have been treated, as those without magicians can't rely on it. Fia expresses her worry, calling his method a heretical theory that denies the God of Genesis. She fears that since the holy water isn't magic, the truth will eventually be discovered. Eccles declares his resolve to save as much of humanity as possible, even if it means playing the role of the church's pet to remove barriers. Quoting Per Aspera ad Astra, he asks Fia to accompany him through the coming adversity. Fia readily accepts, pledging her support. In the beginning, God took pity on weak humans and gave them healing magic, allowing them to escape oppression. Through this magic, humans became the most populous race, but eventually a disastrous global pandemic spread. This led any human to believe that they, having received a gift from God, were the chosen people meant to control the land. However, God lamented that his gift was not the reason for their growth and didn't want to simply take it away. Therefore, to correct humanity's dominance, God decided to bestow the world with something completely different. A power that did not twist the natural laws, yet allowed anybody to use it. This is the story of how the light of modern medicine, brought by Amami Yuito, shone upon this world. This is the story of how the light of modern medicine shone on the world. For every 1,000 people,